Hey there, Mr. Reddit here. Welcome back to another episode of r/Entitled Parent Stories. Today we have a very special episode for you, a compilation of some of the greatest entitled parent stories we read over the past year. So sit back, relax, and enjoy a few hours of the most entitled parents you've ever heard of. And by the way, Karen assured me that if this video gets 1,000 likes, she won't try to speak to anyone's manager for an entire week. So please smash that like button. And if you're new, subscribe and turn on notifications for new stories from Reddit every single day. And become an official member of the Re-Army today, and I'll give you a shout out in an upcoming video. r/Entitled Parents. Entitled mom expects me to pull a credit card out of nowhere and ruins my job. A few years ago, I worked as a branch manager at a mid-sized regional retail bank. It was a small branch, so it was just me, a personal banker/assistant manager, and 2 to 4 tellers. We had a college pretty close. It wasn't a D1 school or anything, but they had a football team, D3, which was popular locally and competitive in their division. It was big enough that every year we opened some new accounts for incoming students. One day, entitled mom, proud entitled dad, and their new arrival freshman son walk into the branch and directly into my office. My branch probably looked like the headquarters of the bank, but it was just a regular bank in a big old school bank building that was rented. I stood up and greeted them. When I did, I looked into the lobby to see it was suddenly super busy, and I didn't notice. The lobby was empty. They blew straight past the tellers and banker whose office is customer-facing and inviting straight to mine. I met eyes with the head teller, and she just shrugged. She later told me that everyone tried to greet them, but they weren't having it. Entitled mom: "We need to open a new account for our son." Me: "Great. Our personal banker opens all of our new accounts and will help you set up everything you need while freshman son is here. 3 hours from them, at school. Let me introduce you." I always let her open new accounts so she could make her bonus. They ignore me and take a seat. Entitled dad: "Son is here to play football." Insert 10 minutes of talk about football and his role as the new freshman kicker at D3 University. I politely engaged in the conversation. Entitled mom: "You're the branch manager. We'd prefer that you open the accounts." Me: "Sure, no problem." They seemed to be a nice family, but definitely helicopter parents and a little entitled, but not story-worthy. We talked a little football, good places to eat, and some general info about the area. I go over a checking account with the kid, and there isn't much to it. A simple student checking account with a debit card and online banking access. Things turn. "He will need a debit card right away. He has $700 cash to start the account. We don't want him walking around with that money. Can we get one today?" Me: "I'm sorry, but we don't print new cards at the branch, but we do have a few expedited delivery options that can help." "But he needs a card now. We are also in a hurry. There are a lot of new student things we need to attend today." Maybe proud entitled dad should stop talking about football if you have somewhere to go. Me: "The fastest way I can get a card here is to have it expedited to the branch in 2 days. There is a fee of $25, but I'll waive it. I can also have the card delivered to our branch closest to campus so freshman son can walk over and grab it. 5-minute walk. We can deposit most of his money into the account now, and he can keep some cash on him for incidental expenses until the card arrives. He can activate the card at the branch ATM. It's super easy." I felt like this was pretty above and beyond the call of duty to offer a good solution. Dad: "He's here to play football. He can't be worrying about this." The entire time, I am of course wondering why they didn't set the account up at their home branch so he could have his debit card when he arrived. However, even with their massive failure in planning, I feel like I deliver the best possible customer service. They get visibly upset. The dad starts to get heated, mumbling under his breath that my bank sucks. Entitled mom: "I need a card here first thing tomorrow." I keep my composure. I reiterate as nicely as I can that isn't possible. Dad: "There has to be a way. I had a bank do it before." He practically has a vein popping on his forehead. I wanted to say, "Dude, I don't know where the heck the bank even makes this crap. I can't drive to the debit card plant and pick one up, and I'm not a genie. It's going to be 2 days, but I gave the standard canned response when someone is asking for the impossible. I wanted them the heck out of my branch at this point. I offer to go meet their kid at a time of their choosing with his debit card. I actually meet him with the card at an ATM by his dorm where I show him how to activate it and use it. Nice kid. I hear from his mom at least 3 more times asking questions about the account, and because she messed up the simple task of setting up online banking, she emails me about it several times as well. I had more contact helping her with this account than any other student account in history. She gets a survey online at random. Surveys were important to me. Anything less than a 5 for 5 might as well be a 0 in the eyes of many at the bank whose only job was looking at surveys. Part of my bonus was tied to the score, and at a perfect 5.0, I led the region. 1 out of 5. A 1. And a lengthy complaint about debit cards, online banking, and the branch manager's unwillingness to help. It ended my perfect average with surveys, which no one else had out of 15 branches for the quarter, and I had to write an action plan about it, because if you got a 1, it was discussed with some lame coach-type person. I know there wasn't much payoff to this story, but that one still bothers me. She just had to deal with the manager. Next we've got how to ruin a wedding for everyone. I just got home from the wedding of a really good friend of mine, and I'm fuming. It's a long story, so bear with me. My friend planned her wedding for a long time, and everything was just right. She always wanted a winter wedding, and she had luck. It even snowed a bit today, so she was super happy until the aunt-in-law showed up with her daughter. We've got aunt-in-law, we've got entitled daughter, we've got maid of honor, and mother-in-law. The daughter was wearing just a long, silvery white gown. It was tight, strapless, and no jacket or anything, while it was -1 degrees. The ceremony. Aunt-in-law and her daughter arguing with the church officiant who told entitled daughter to wear a kind of a scarf to cover her shoulders. They yelled at him. It's a ridiculous and outdated rule. The groom told them to go with it and stop making a scene. Entitled daughter kept complaining that it's too cold in the church until the person next to her told her to just get over it. Aunt-in-law cried the whole time, so loud people started telling her to keep quiet or get out. Aunt-in-law tried to place entitled daughter as far in the center of the photos as she could and asked the photographer constantly to take photos of just her daughter. He said no, and aunt-in-law got sniffy, complaining about how unprofessional he was. The dinner. Maid of honor and best man gave both a short but sweet speech. Aunt-in-law reached for the mic. By the looks of my friend and her husband, this was not planned. She told a story about how her daughter and the groom were childhood best friends and how sad her daughter got when they had to move because she, aunt-in-law, started her own business in a town 20 kilometers away. Aunt-in-law said she was hoping her daughter and my friend can become best friends because she can learn a lot from her daughter. Aunt-in-law handed the mic to her daughter. She said she was so happy to have made it. She wants to become a vet, and as everyone knows, this is a lot of hard work, but she would never miss the wedding and made jokes about how she's now behind with her study. It looked like she wanted to say more, but the best man grabbed the mic, thanked both of them for their speeches, and told us to enjoy the dinner. Aunt-in-law and entitled daughter talked so loudly, every table could hear their conversations. They wouldn't stop talking, no matter if they wanted to listen or not. Aunt-in-law was praising her daughter the whole time and talking about her business trying to get sales. She owns some kind of decor ship and told me she provided the wedding with the decor. Later, my friend told me this was BS because the decor was from Maid of Honor, who bought it from IKEA for her. It was cringy. The second photo shoot. The snow had melted a bit and it was kinda muddy. And that's when crap hit the fan. I wasn't there because it was way too cold for me, so I missed the final act, but a few guests told me what happened when they gossiped about it later. With that said, I don't know how much of the following part is true, so take it with a grain of salt. Apparently, one of the guests stepped on entitled daughter's dress, and she was furious. She apparently yelled at him and called him a donkey. She just kept going, even after he apologized to her. The groom finally had enough and told them to go home. This is when aunt-in-law told the groom he was a jerk the whole day to them and she didn't deserve to be treated like that. She tried to shove him only to slip, and according to the guests, she twisted or at least hurt her ankle in the process. Mother-in-law offered to drive them to the hospital, but they refused. The aftermath. By the end of the day, the mood was down. Guests left early, and my friend is mad. It was supposed to be their day, but entitled daughter and aunt-in-law tried to make it all about them, and she was way too shy to say anything against them. She feels like it's her fault. The groom and his family are pretty mad about aunt-in-law too. The mother-in-law told me her sister was always like this, and nobody on the groom's side wanted her to come because of this, while the maid of honor is upset because of the decoration lie. The family on the bride's side, who are all really non-confrontational, tried to talk it down and tried to justify the actions by saying, maybe they had a lot going on, or maybe it was our fault because we should have cared more about their needs. Next we've got, this isn't a taxi, this is my mom's car. I live near a rather popular but small party town. Every day during the summer and every Friday and Saturday outside the summer, the bars and clubs open up and a ton of both locals and tourists come to party it up. Since the region is quite spaced out and we're not in the US, where 2 hours is considered a casual drive, most party goers opt to call a cab to get to and from the clubs. This is usually where I come in. See, my boss really loves New York, so he imports secondhand New York taxis to use here. Since we're the only ones in the country driving them and we have the cheapest rates of all the cab companies around, we're the most popular and often the first someone will call if they need a cab. Now, the part about us driving New York taxis is kind of important because these cabs are incredibly out of place and easy to spot. They're bright yellow, have large printing on them of the company name and phone number, have the little sign on the roof, and have a specially colored license plate that indicates it is a legit taxi. Now, I had the day off since it was a Friday during the winter, so there isn't enough to do for both me and my colleague, so we take turns every other week. I'm not much of a party animal or a drinker for the fact, so even on my days off, I'd rather just stay home and play video games. This night, I was at home when I got a call from a group of friends that were out partying. They stupidly convinced the friend that was supposed to be their designated driver to have a few beers with them, and things got out of hand. So they asked me if I could pick them up. I said sure, and got in my mom's car, my own car only having one passenger seat. Now, remember what I said about the New York taxis a few lines back? Yeah, my mom's car did not tick any of those boxes. It's a large grayish Volvo station wagon, obviously with no signs or the appropriate license plate to be a taxi. I get to the clubs about 15 minutes before they close. Locals with a sense of how the taxi rush works when all the clubs close are smart enough to leave early, so they have an easier time finding a cab that's available. Of course, while these people are just barely smart enough to figure this out, they also are too drunk to have a decent eye for detail. To them, any car that parks in front or near the clubs is a taxi to them. Just like I do when I am actually on the clock, I lock my doors, intend to only open them once my friends are here. But unfortunately, my mom's car is getting older and the back doors didn't lock properly. Before I have a chance to react, 4 guys shove themselves in my back seat. One of them even reaches to the front and unlocks the front passenger door for 2 other guys. Now, I'm taken aback by the display, but the act of unlocking the door really gets me. I already hate it when people do this when I am working, so for them to do it when I'm not is even worse. My boss does not subscribe to the customer is always right mentality. When we're driving, we are king and our cab is our kingdom. You can enter my cab when I allow it. Now I have 6 randoms in a car meant for 4 passengers, and I'm trying to tell them to get out, but they're all singing like loud jerks so they don't hear me. As I'm trying to get through, I do hear bits through the singing of one guy trying to tell me where they need to go, and after a few repeats, he gets more irate as I'm obviously not going anywhere. I give the volume knob of my radio a good spin, and a short blast of sound is successful at shutting these jerks up. With them all quiet now, I tell them again that they need to get out as I'm not taking them anywhere. They get mad, just tell me to drive, and not to worry about it, as they apparently completely misunderstood what I said. I repeat that they need to get the heck out of my car. I'm not a taxi. Two of them say they recognize me from last week, which is entirely possible since I was working last week. So I'm obviously a taxi driver and I just need to take them home. Note that I never actually understood the guy that was telling me where they wanted to go. So even if I wanted to, which I didn't, I had no idea where home was. They tell me to take them to the same place I brought them last week. Now, I am absolutely horrible with faces. Add this to the fact that I'm a very down-to-business person, so I tend to not really look at the faces of my passengers, so even if I did indeed bring them home last week, I wouldn't for the life of me know where that was a week later since I had no idea who these jerks were. I tell them that even if I knew where they needed to go, I'm not a taxi driver and they need to get out. Also, even if I was a taxi driver, at least one person would need to get out since the New York taxis only have seats for 5 passengers. Now comes the icing on the cake. One of the jerks in the back seat decides that now is an amazing time to throw up. In my mom's car. I'm livid, but decide to take the middle road between private and work policy. At my work, we have a few policies regarding the stuff that goes on in the taxis, some obvious, some less. 1. No drinking or glass bottles. 2. No smoking or vaping. 3. No touching the driver. And 4. If you throw up, you either clean it up or pay 100 euros. Some of these jerks were too far gone to clean it up and were more likely to just make it worse. The absence of tools to clean it with at all didn't help either. I repeat again that they need to get out of my car, and I add that they need to pay me 100 euros. The guys that apparently rode with me before were aware of the 100 euros policy and were obviously still under the impression that I was on the clock, but they were still hesitant to pay since obviously 100 euros is quite a lot of money for their age. They start making a scene which rocks my car all over the place, attracting the attention of 2 police officers. With how busy the clubs can get, the area is heavily patrolled during party hours. They come over and ask me what's happening. One of them bends over and looks into the car, seeing the passengers all packed in like sardines. Officer: You know you're not allowed to drive like this, right? Me: I know, and I wasn't going to, but these jerks won't get out, and they threw up in the back. Police officer: May I see your cab license? Me: I'm not here as a cab driver. I was just here to pick up some friends, which these guys are not. One of the police officers had seen me before and checks my dashboard. No taximeter. She checks my license plate, which is obviously just a regular plate, and she notes my frustration at the people in my car. A few minutes later, my friends finally arrive to the sight of 2 cops pulling jerks out of my car, with one guy yelling at me why I don't want to make any money. I believe another yelled the classic, "We pay your salary" comment, which, spoiler warning, they don't. Most of the company's income comes from special reservations, and I get paid by the hour, not customer, so their contribution to my salary is minimal to non-existent. I, for some reason, now lost to me, tried to explain this to them, which was like explaining the concept of Schrodinger's cat to an actual cat with how crazy some of them were. The cops, blessed as they are, know all too well how annoying it was to clean puke from fabric, so they enforced the technically not applicable to my situation policy of 100 euros for throwing up in my car. My friends get in the car. Luckily, with 3, no one had to sit in the puke, and I thank the officers for their help and want to drive off, but not before checking my rearview mirror, where I see these jerks angrily walking towards another cab, a bright yellow cab, my colleague who was actually on shift. I quickly grab my phone. I wasn't driving yet, and I open an app we use for work that basically turns your phone into a walkie-talkie, hoping my colleague decided to log in despite being on his own tonight. He was. I quickly tell him not to take these people with him. The mention of vomit was all the confirmation my colleague needed to leave these guys standing. With the other cab companies already swamped with reservations, I can already imagine how long these guys had to wait for a cab to pick them up. At least it would give them time to sober up. In the end, my friends and I are driving home. I'm still somewhat irate, but we managed to have a laugh, only soured somewhat by the equally sour smell coming from the back. We get home. My friends pass out on the couch. I clean the vomit before it sets and put 80 of the 100 euros underneath my mom's phone in the living room since it was her car. Epilogue. The next day, my mom was not happy after hearing this story, but there was no trace of the vomit and she got 80 euros out of it. I did receive an email from my boss asking for my side of the story regarding a complaint he received on a day I wasn't even working. He promptly trashed the complaint after hearing my side, and that's honestly the last I heard about it. My friends each chipped in a 20 and bought me a game for the help in trouble, so now I'm playing Breath of the Wild. Next we've got Karen tells me to arrest shopper. A little setup for what happened. I'm a 21-year-old guy working security for an HOA in Texas. I had just ended a 13-hour overnight shift, which had put me into a tired and grumpy mood. My wife was 6 months pregnant and asked me to pick up some groceries on my way home. I agreed. I was picking up the last of my groceries when I feel a tap on the back and a high-pitched, "Officer, I need you now!" I look up and see a middle-aged woman who looks like she had pure rage in her eyes. I start to explain that I am not a police officer when she cuts me off, yelling, "I don't care! Now!" and grabs my arm. At this point, I am beyond annoyed, but also want to help in case something was actually wrong, like someone was injured or attacked or something. While security officers are not the police, we are required to render aid if able while in uniform. I follow the lady to the next aisle to find a woman and her kid shopping. I ask Karen what she needs, and she exclaims, "She stole my food! Arrest her, now!" The other woman looks back confused and says, "What?" Karen screams, "You know what you did, you jerk! That was my pork roast, and it was the cheapest one. Give it to me, now!" The other woman and her start arguing. Me, being way too tired and way too disinterested, turn around to walk away when I hear, "Where the heck are you going?" Still walking away, I reply, "Back to shopping." Next, I feel something tug on my waist. I instantly turn around to see that Karen took my handcuffs off of my duty belt and was running back to the other woman, screaming, "You're under citizen's arrest!" And she actually tries to handcuff her, and fails. I race towards her to get my handcuffs back while she is trying to handcuff this other woman, which I am going to take a wild guess and say didn't actually steal Karen's food. And she yells at me to stop and hits me in the nose with the handcuffs hard enough to make my nose bleed. Okay, now I'm mad. I yank the handcuffs from Karen, grab her and turn her around and put her hands in the handcuffs. She screams, "Help! He's attacking me!" I tell her to sit down and shut the heck up while I call the police. By this time, a store manager heard what was going on and came over. "What's going on here?" To which Karen exclaimed, "He is trying to attack me! Help me!" I'm on the phone with 911 at this point, who said they were sending someone. After I hang up, I explain to the manager what happens. He says he will have asset protection pull up the footage and tells us all to stay put. About 5 or so minutes later, 2 officers show up, one of whom I know from when I have to call police at the HOA. He greets me and asks for my side, while his partner interviews Karen, who is now full-on crying, saying, "He hit me and tried to hurt me." Finally, the manager comes back, stating he has the footage for us to view. The other officer goes to the AP office to view footage while I talk to the officer I know. A few minutes later, the other officer comes back and asks me and the lady she was arguing with if we would like to press charges. Apparently, when I turned to walk away while they were arguing, Karen hit the other woman in the gut. We both say yes. Apparently, in Texas, if you assault a uniformed security officer, it is upgraded and it is the same charge as assaulting a police officer. She was hauled off into the back of a squad car and charged with assault. She also had an outstanding warrant for theft of service. Go figure. Karen will have a lot of time to think if that pork roast was worth it. I got my groceries and went home to tell my wife what happened. How I ended up with my boss's job. I was working for an advertising agency, a pretty big one. I had an unethical manager. Well, when I started out, I had a manager who was one of the most unethical managers I've ever dealt with. He'd order his sales reps to do things that would increase his bonuses, which are based on margins. Example, say a client decided to buy product XYZ and their spend was $2,000 a month. He would want the agent to put up products ABC and keep the spend at $2,000 even though the client didn't agree to that. Fact is, the clients generally wouldn't notice, but if they did, it could cost you your job. I was the guy that refused his demands. He would tell me to cheat the clients, and I would refuse. He would get mad, I wouldn't care. This went on for quite a while. Now there's something I don't tell people very often. I live in a one-party consent state, which means so long as I'm aware a conversation is being recorded, I can record it without informing the other party. I had just upsold my largest client, making him even larger, but I didn't sell the products my boss wanted me to sell. He demanded I switch things around. I refused. I told him I sold the client XYZ, that's what we agreed to. I'm not going to change that without the customer permission. His exact words were, "Forget the customer. This is your largest client. I need him on ABC, or I'm not going to make my number." I'm sorry, but you and I both know ABC isn't right for this client, and that's why he didn't buy it. "You're fired. If you can't follow instructions, you're fired." After confirming he was dead serious, I said, "If you do that, I'll have your job by the end of the month." I went home. I didn't think he'd go through with it. Sure as heck, next morning I'm locked out of all our systems. I call tech support and get told I've been fired. So, who do I call? I call our regional vice president and tell him I have several recordings I think he should listen to. Remember, my boss ordering me to do unethical things wasn't common. So I meet up with my RVP and play 6 different recordings that I had saved showing my manager was pushing his agents to break the law. To which my RVP leaned back in his chair and let out a sigh, knowing he had to fire my manager. Having a sales manager that is forcing his reps to break the law is just bad business. At which point I asked for my job back. He agreed that I would get my job back and asked me to take the week off and call him on Monday. He told me he'd talk to payroll and make sure I got paid for this week as well. For your information, he fulfilled all of his promises with me, although I missed a payday, but got back pay later, so I was fine with that. That Monday I came into our Monday morning meeting in which my RVP was there. He informed the entire team that my boss had been fired and why. He also mentioned that if anyone wanted to apply for his job, there was now an opening. So I applied for, and after 3 rounds of interview, got my promotion. Sure as heck, I was right. I did have my boss's job by the end of the month. It was glorious the first day walking into his office and sitting in his nice big comfy chair. Next we've got, is my mother entitled, or is this a normal situation? Important aspects. My mother had to quit her job because of medical issues some 2 months ago. To financially help the family out, I decided to get a weekend brigade. Obviously, it takes a lot of my time. It can take me up to 2 hours to get to school in the morning and up to 4 hours time spent by hanging out because next bus is scheduled in 1 hour included. To get home in the afternoon/evening, traffic and my bus goes only every 1 hour. My family has a small farm and I do a big part of work around it. Not that much this part of year, but still pretty time consuming. Even though I have this busy schedule, to keep psychologically and socially healthy, I spend time playing games, being out with friends and girlfriend, which is something my mother always strongly objected to. I never really thought about my mother being entitled until this incident. We've got me, we've got Dad, Mom, and Eva, my girlfriend. I was playing GTA Online with friends and Eva when Mom came. "Are you playing that stupid game with them again?" Realizing that an argument is inevitable, I tell my friends and Eva that I have to go and turn the PS off. Me. Why? "You haven't done all your chores yet." Me. Not to be audacious, but like what chores? Don't forget, I'm the one who gets up at 4:30 to not basically stop until evening, so you don't have to feed the animals and clean their feces. Mom. "You didn't sweep the house." Me. "Well, I got home at 18:30 and was around the animals for a further hour." Mom. "You'd be home earlier if you didn't go out with that girl of yours. Ice skating, and even better, your phone would still work." I fell and it slid out of my pocket, hit the ground, hitting its already badly damaged corner and bounced. Just before I hit the ground, I fell with my elbow directly on the mentioned corner, causing even more cracks to the LCD panel and now destroying the touch sensitivity in the right side of the display. Me. And what has my already before barely usable phone to do with this? Dad now came to see what this was about. Dad. What is wrong now?
He's playing that game with those people again.
Dad. Let him be. He had a long day and deserves to have some time for his friends and games.
But he was already with that girl of his and still has to sweep the house.
Dad. So? Look at what he is doing for the past 2 months, and look at what you were doing. He deserves some time for himself. You're welcome to substitute his work around the house. Mom.
But that...
Dad. Not an excuse. He did the same amount of same work even when he couldn't use his left arm at all. And you can't sweep the darn house because you can't stand for long periods of time? You're still healthy enough to do basic housework. In case, we're all here to help. Mom.
He'd have much more time if he let the games and people go. Family is more important.
Me. So is my mental health, friends, and Eva though. I would not last long being in never-ending circle of sleep, school, work, sleep.
Not an excuse. No friends, no games, no Eva or whatever the heck her name is, as long as you live in this house.
Me. You do know that I have resources and reasons valid enough to pack my stuff and live in a dorm room near my school.
No, you don't have either.
Me. Well, you have no right to hold me here since it's causing a lot of stress for me. At this point, I was fed up with her attitude and proceeded to plan B. Me. You know what? You're right. Your house, your rules. My salary, my support, as well as my thing, what I will do with it. Rethink your attitude to me and what I'm doing, unless you really want to do my part of work here. Mom went nuts on me, but I just messaged Eva that I am coming overnight. She's usually fine with it, and so are her parents, unless, you know. Me. Look, not repeating myself. I do the best I can, but need some time for myself. I seriously don't have the nerves to listen to this constant crap. I'm going to Eva's. See you tomorrow. Good night. Mom again objected, but Dad backed me up. This happened yesterday, so still awaiting results. I hope Mom changes her attitude and I won't have to go to the dorm. I'll try to keep you updated. Update. There actually was another argument yesterday between me coming back from work and posting the story. To keep it short, me, Dad, and Mom tried to discuss the situation. Dad confirmed his intentions with lowering the overall workload and said that Mom should do some actual work or go work as a cashier in a local store, always hiring, so I can quit mine to have more time and less load. She obviously used her condition as an argument. Well, honestly, forget her. She can't stand for longer periods of time, so she won't sweep the house. I basically couldn't use my left arm at all for a month. You don't realize how important a body part is until you can't move it, and still did all my normal work. This morning she ranted about how I'm not doing anything and how I should do something. This is my scheduled day off. No work, no brigade, no schoolwork, no nothing. Just a day to relieve and relax. Next we've got,
My son is in the next classroom.
First post here. Since I work in kid education, not school, we teach them programming in extra scholar hours. To me, it's more a matter of which story to tell, but I think today was a good enough one, if short. So, quick info. The place I teach in has big windows on the walls between the classrooms and the wall between the classrooms and hallways. One class is roughly 10 students. This little play actors are me, the entitled mom, and the kids of the class. So I'm teaching class, everything is going well, and the kids are pretty focused, though we talk and joke a bit as well, when suddenly entitled mom comes in the hallway. We normally forbid parents from entering classrooms during the class because we strongly advocate for kid independence and letting them experiment without parents breathing down their neck. We have special times for sharing with their family after the class, which we set up for that very purpose. So entitled mom is in the hallway and she peers into every classroom to locate her kid. She finally finds him in the classroom next to mine. which is the only room to not have direct windows into it from the hallway, just the door, which is closed. So the only way to see the inside of that room is through the wall in my room. So entitled mom can't wave her kid, and so she decides to enter my classroom. So then starts waving at him in the middle of my class, disturbing it quite thoroughly, kicking the kid's bags around as she paces. Now, I rarely deal with entitled parents because I do not tolerate BS in any form, and I can have a bit of a short temper. My kids know how little BS I take, and they all like that with me, the rules are clear-cut. So they know what's about to happen, and they all look at entitled mom with the happy, cruel, "oh, she's gonna get it" look of kids seeing someone else getting scolded. I cough once to get her attention, and as she turns around, I stare her down like the rude fool she is. And then, entitled mom.
What?
Me, in a calm, level voice. "Ma'am, in case you failed to notice, I'm having a class, so you're going to return outside."
But my son is in that other classroom, and I wanted to see him.
Me. "Ma'am, the kids I teach are capable of understanding such clear and simple instructions easily enough. Are you not able to do the same?" As I say this, I point to my kids, and they are all holding back laughs.
Yes, in a minute. My son...
Me, cutting her off, making her glare at me. "Ma'am, your son isn't the one interrupting my class. He's following his own class. I asked you to get out because your presence disturbs my class. You will leave now." At this point, my kids start laughing because the "now" is usually my trump card with any of them that make troubles. If I use the "now" in that very special tone, it means they're pretty much done for, and the next step after this is me calling their parents. In this case, it would have been me calling my manager, but entitled mom finally got the hint and left the room, under the kids' laughs, and grumbling about how she would talk with my manager about my conduct in class and my education skills, at which point I just turned to the kids with a big smile. I did not get into any sort of trouble. Entitled mom got a second lecture from my manager about how parents are not to enter a classroom unless it's an emergency, and her own kid, when class ended, gave her a very loud complaint about the whole thing. I might end up sharing more. Like I said, I got a lot of those, about once a week, but most aren't very interesting, just basic level of entitled parents. We'll see. Next we've got, I'm not an airport worker, I just play one at O'Hare. I was in the Chicago O'Hare Airport, getting there around 9 p.m. at night, and a bunch of flights had been canceled there. I was flying from Omaha back home to Florida. Well, I finally got my flight home squared away, having to go through DC the next day, and it was time to find a hotel for the night. At first, I was on hold with the airline while they looked for a hotel within my budget, which was actually very high since work was paying for this, and I was on the phone for at least 30 minutes or so while this guy was making calls to local hotels. After that, I was looking online myself and even on VRBO. So I decided to sit in the closest seat I could find during this call and my search, which was located behind an information desk. And this was just a desk, a simple, everyday office desk, not like one of those huge information circle desks built into the structure. I had my luggage right in front of me, so if people bothered to actually see me, they would know that I was a traveler just like them. I even started talking to two other ladies that took up camp on the desk in front of me, while they searched for hotels too. There was a sign on the desk that read, "Closed," but it was likely hard to see given the other people sitting on the desk. Anyway, I probably got asked at least a dozen times about where something was in the airport, where was a good place to eat, if I knew any hotels in the area, where were the overnight cots set up, etc. When the first person to come up to me asked me something, I figured they thought I worked at the desk, but I listened to their question in case I could actually help. Yeah, I couldn't. So as time went on, I just kept telling people I was just traveling and didn't work for the airport or any airline. Not one person was rude or yelled at me, despite everyone being tired, frustrated, and likely hungry. After the first few people came up to me, I thought about moving somewhere else, but there honestly wasn't anywhere else to go. That place was packed with upset air travelers. The first time it happened, I was actually like, "Oh, maybe I'll have something to post on Reddit. But no, all my encounters were normal and pleasant under the circumstances. For those interested, I actually ended up having to spend the night in O'Hare. I now call it the O'Hare Hotel. I met up with a lovely woman who ironically was headed to Omaha, where I had just came from, and a nice guy a few years older than me. We hunkered down in a long, very lit hallway for the night after finding some cots, blankets, and pillows. The airport also hands out these little sundry bags, which was convenient. My airline tried to reroute me all over the East Coast to get me home, so early in the AM when they woke us up, we had to get up at like 5 when the airport officially opened. I booked another direct flight on a different airline for around 7 in the morning. I'm glad work was paying, so I was lucky to have the option. I know a lot of people were really stuck and at the mercy of the Chicago air gods. And this was June 2018, by the way, so not related to bad winter weather at all. Next we've got, do people not know how to wait? So my parents and I went to Longhorn Steakhouse for my mom's birthday. It's a Saturday and this place just opened not too long ago, so it was pretty packed. The wait was an hour when we got there. Since it was so good, and this was where we wanted to eat, we waited. Another thing I should mention, this place was packed. People would probably be standing outside if it wasn't winter. First part, it was only a couple minutes since we were given a pager and started to wait. A man, and whom I assume was his wife, came into the restaurant. He was behind her, pushing her wheelchair. She just had a broken leg/foot and didn't say anything, and he was the entitled dude of this part. When he was told the wait time, he said loudly, "An hour? Forget it." He then backed out of the door, very annoyed. My parents and I immediately thought he was a jerk and were making fun of it. People were coming in and out. A lot of people just didn't want to wait and left, and one group actually left while waiting, saying they wanted to cancel. While we waited, we also noticed across the way there was a little kid, probably 8 to 9. I'm terrible with age guessing, that was 5 seconds away from a meltdown. Her face screamed, "Why do we have to wait?" The only thing keeping her calm was her phone. My parents and I brought up the fact that when I was young and would make a fuss, I was left alone or taken out of the place. After a bit, my dad noticed a couple of chairs that were open and told my mom and I to sit down. And after a while, the man next to mom moved over one for my dad to sit down. After a while, we noticed them, the entitled lady and her 2 friends. Since they didn't say much, I'll just call them man and lady. The woman, however, will be called Karen. First thing, Karen was standing right in front of one of the shelves they use for menus and right in the path of the waiters trying to seat people. She kept having to move and just kept going back to the same spot and talked to man and lady. The waitress at the front was already obviously stressed out and had one of those cubes that you can fidget with. Karen was practically touching her, she was so close. Then she did one of the most annoying things I ever saw someone do. She hovered over the waitress's shoulder and was looking at her wait list, listing the times to man and lady. The waitress had to block the screen so the Karen would stop, but that didn't stop her since she was very obviously trying to look at the screen. Basically, the entire time after, my parents and I were making fun of her entitled attitude and other entitled people. I brought up the time my mom's boss wouldn't reschedule a visit so she could be able to see me before I went to Spain. Another story about an entitled jerk that I'd be happy to talk about if people want to hear about him, and other stories I have about entitled jerks. After a while, we got up to be seated. We didn't even fully get up when this Karen almost knocked me over to get to our chairs and was just like,
"You gotta get to those seats before they're gone."
My mom was pretty annoyed at that, but we just followed the waitress to our table and had a great time making fun of the Karen and her annoying attitude for a good 10 minutes when we sat down. Be a horrible coworker and take from the company? I'll end your career. Straight out of college, with a degree in graphic design, hungry to find a good job in a horrible economy, 2009, I applied all over the place. I ended up settling for a decently paid internship instead with really good company, a beer distributor for a large and legendary macro brewery. I was pretty ecstatic. Even if this was a part-time internship, it had great potential to turn into a full-time job. I was hired in to be a graphic designer for their in-house print shop, and I would be working with one other person. This girl, Alice. Name changed for anonymity. My first day working, I met Alice, and she seemed really nice, knowledgeable, and passionate about graphic design. Due to seniority, she was technically my supervisor. After a few days working, I learned a few things about her. Obsessed with running, obsessed with horses, she was a horse girl, homeschooled her whole life, and overall realized she was just an awkward person. Nothing wrong with that. Some people are awkward. It's okay. But all day, every day, I would hear about running, and she was obsessed with competing with her sister. It's all she talked about. Her obsessions were just draining to hear about some days, but the obsessions come back later in the story. Anyway, I dealt with the awkwardness for a while. I just learned of ways to ignore it. After a couple years is when the real trouble started. By this time, I became a full-time employee, not an intern anymore. We were pretty much equals when it came to rank in the office. Only thing she did more than I did was ordering. She would order ink cartridges for our printers, paper, print heads, etc. That's all she did more than me. She still delegated work, but I didn't mind. At a certain point, I was put in charge of reorganizing our office and helped move everything around with my boss. The catch was that I got to pick where I sat, got to choose my desk and location if I helped move. Alice knew this, didn't care, and said she was too busy to help with the reorganization. I was happy to help. The way our office was organized after the change was she sat in front of me with her back facing me, and I would be all the way in the back of the office by the printers. So basically, I could see everything she was doing on her computer, if I wanted to or cared to. But we always got our work done, browsed the web for personal reasons occasionally throughout the day. It wasn't abused by either of us, so no big deal. Like I said, she was my superior, so she would designate jobs. We would get job requests from the salesman, and they would differ in difficulty and time to complete them. Everything was equal. We would bust our butts and have an equal amount of work always, until I went on vacation for a week. I'd go on vacation for that week and come back into the office to see her sitting in my desk. I'm immediately confused. I then notice her computer, picture frames, desk organizer. All her crap is now moved from her desk to mine, and all my stuff is moved to where she was sitting and was thrown everywhere. This jerk literally went through all my stuff, unplugged my computer and everything I had, and switched desks with me while I was on vacation. No text or call, email, or notice about it or why she did it. I look at her and say, what happened to my desk? Alice.
Oh, so while you were gone, the printers kept jamming up, and I had to get to them quicker, so I just switched desks with you since your desk is closer.
Me. Okay, I don't understand. It's only like a 5-foot difference between your desk and mine. Alice.
Yeah, I know, but they were jamming up, and every time they would do that, it would take too long to boot back up and restart everything.
Me in my head. Total BS. Yeah, okay. I don't get it, but whatever. I didn't get it. It was really weird, and I was pretty upset. All my stuff was moved and our desks were switched. Not only that, but IT had to get involved to switch our phone numbers to our desk. That took a few days, so I kept getting all her calls and she got mine. It was ridiculous. I didn't care after a few minutes when I saw the pile of work to do for the day. There were jobs backed up, and the whole sales team was asking where their job orders were. Alice kept saying,
"Oh, it was so busy last week with just me here. Couldn't get it done."
So we had to bust our butts and play catch up for a few days. One key part of all this is that we have a printing program that files and filters all the print jobs we send. It has date, time, file name, number of copies, time it took to print, etc. I was curious, so I go back one week to see what she did while I was gone. Absolutely nothing. A couple of the days I was gone, there were only a few files sent to print, and they were projects that would have taken at most 15 minutes apiece to do. Even if the printers were jamming, there is absolutely no way she could have done that little without slacking off the entire time. You can always work on projects or send them to the printer queue to send later. As weeks started to pass after she moved the desks, I noticed productivity started to go way down. Even worse, I started to get a ton of projects sent to me, twice as many as usual. I was at the point there would be days I would stay 2 hours late just to finish things up. Not only that, but Alice worked out a deal with our boss where she could start coming in 1 hour earlier before anyone else is in the office and leave an hour earlier at the end of the day because she had CrossFit and boot camp for running and needed to train for a marathon. That's fine, except she wasn't doing her job. The printing software we used to track everything was showing she actually wasn't doing jack. I don't get how clueless she could be to think she would get away with this either. We can both see every job that is sent, or not sent in this matter, to the printer, showing for every 10 jobs I would send to her 1. Ah, now I know why she moved the desks, so she could be where I was without anyone looking at her screen. I also noticed every time I would get up to go by her to grab something from the printers, she would grab her mouse really fast and click away from whatever website she was on, wasting time instead of doing work. I would also check to see what she did during that hour she would come into work early while no one was here. Nothing. I would look to see what she did during the hour I was gone for lunch. Nothing. So here I am, coming in on time, busting my butt, doing a ton of work, staying late while she would waste an hour in the morning, waste an hour during my lunch, and not even do the bare minimum while there. I had enough. Up until then, I had to put up with her awkwardness, and that's whatever, but I was no longer going to put up with her laziness and poor work ethic. I knew she was going on a long weekend trip in a couple weeks to run a marathon. I started taking screenshots of the print jobs on our system's queue every day at the end of the day, showing what I did and she didn't do. Shows how she slacked off and gave me all the work to do and didn't do anything. It was more than enough proof to show she was abusing company time severely. The Thursday she was gone, I gave her a taste of her own medicine. I moved our desks back. I moved everything from my desk back to my old desk she stole from me, and all her crap nicely put back on her desk. I kept everything nice and organized, as if nothing was changed besides the location of the desks themselves. Even further, I went and located extra long telephone cords so I didn't have to bother IT to switch our phones back again. I held on to the screenshots I took of her slacking off and didn't show them to my boss. I wasn't going to unless she raised heck about me moving our desks, which why would she? It was my desk originally. The printers obviously were not jamming, ever. It was a total BS excuse, and I never got mad at her or made a big deal when she did it. So why would she get mad at me for doing the same thing? I didn't even care about the desk itself. I cared that she was slacking off and not doing her job where she was in a spot no one could keep track of what she was doing. She was supposed to be my superior, someone who can manage and delegate work. Instead, she took advantage of me and the company. I didn't want any huge surprises, so at the end of the work week, I sent her a text. Hi Alice, just wanted to let you know I ended up moving our desks back to their original location. Figured it wasn't a big deal, but I just wanted my original desk back that I claimed after I was given the option for helping organize everything. Just didn't want you to be surprised on Monday. Have a good weekend. I gave her more of a courtesy than when she did that, so I figured it wouldn't be an issue. There was. I didn't get a response or anything, so I walk in Monday morning after she got back from her long weekend, and I just say hi, walk past her, and go to my reclaimed desk. Me. Not sure if you got my text, but I let you know I moved the desk back to their original spots. Figured the original issue of the printers jamming up was fixed, so I just wanted my original desk back. Alice turns around to look at me, clearly mad.
Yeah, I got your text. By the way, we're going to have a nice long talk with Jim,
Our boss, name changed for anonymity.
about this.
Me. Okay, what's the issue? I just wanted my desk back. You moved them without even telling me before, and there wasn't an issue. So why are you mad?
We'll just go talk to Jim about all this.
Sounds good. Let's go. Alice turns back to her computer, then turns back at me again.
Why do you have to be so ornery?
Me. Ornery? Alice.
Yes, ornery.
You mean ornery? And if you did intend to call me ornery, I'm not at all. I just moved our desks back, exactly what you did before. She just turned back around and we were called into my boss's office. He clearly didn't give a crap and was just fed up with Alice's BS since this wasn't the first time she brought up a total non-issue to him before. She complained constantly, would bring up nonsense about the office all the time about things that just didn't matter one bit. This was another one. She goes on explaining how I just want to cause issues for no reason. Then Jim asks me, "Well, why did you move the desks anyway?" That's when I whipped out the stack of screenshots showing her lack of work and how I was being overworked and doing the work of two people. He looks over everything and was pretty upset and frustrated. Questioned why this was going on and why the work wasn't delegated properly. He also mentioned he would notice how I would be here late all the time. She had no answers. Alice made up excuses how she was busy placing orders for supplies and doing other projects that were not all printed work that couldn't be tracked. He wasn't having any of it and just said to keep the desk the way they are now and not change anything again. So I got my desk back. Funny enough, now that I could see everything she was doing, all the open jobs were delegated properly. Weird. All the workload was split evenly. Shocker. And all the BS from before stopped. After this fiasco, there were issues upon issues between us. There was a rivalry, and we got along enough to just get the work done, and that's it. I could care less about her. She would be nasty to me all the time and just say mean comments. Whatever, I could care less. I wanted nothing to do with her. I knew she had poor work ethic and did what she had to do to keep her job by just the bare minimum to make it seem like she was working. Now remember when I said I worked for a beer distributor? Pretty sweet gig. We got to try a lot of new products we would distribute before they came out, even during work, to a point. Just be responsible doing it. One day we have a new one outside in the warehouse and we're able to drink it in the morning. I had a couple and Alice kept going back for more. I was around her enough times where I could tell she was having too much. When this happened, she would be forgetful and slack off. Another shocker. When lunchtime came around, she barely did anything that day. I went to lunch and came back after an hour. I noticed she was gone already and had gone to lunch before I got back. Looked like she just got up and left. Computer was still logged in, crap all over her desk, half beer sitting there, and probably just didn't care since she was in that lazy state of drinking. I walk up to our normal printer to grab a couple emails I printed out. Not on the expensive HP printers we print banners on, just our normal printers. I notice a couple pieces of paper sitting there under what I had just printed out. I look to see what it is, and it's an invoice from eBay. I didn't think much of it, but I did a double look after noticing one of the pictures is of the ink cartridges we use on our big 36-inch HP printers. These are typically $150 to $200 a toner cartridge, depending on the color, and there were 10 total for each printer when being used. No way, I thought to myself. Is she selling these on eBay and pocketing the money? I look up the seller name on eBay, which was something like Runner's World 347 or something related to running. Red flag. Turns out she has been stealing ink cartridges and selling them online off and on for over 3 years. On one transaction, she made over $1,000 right before Christmas, probably to buy Christmas presents or something. Another was before her marathon she did earlier in my story, probably to pay for that and her trip to go running. There were transactions for running shoes she purchased on there that I have never seen her wear in the office on casual Fridays before. Something horse-related, but forgot exactly what it was. It was hard evident she was stealing products from the company and selling them on eBay. Since she did the ordering and inventory of all the printing supplies, she could take advantage of it pretty easily, and she did. How stupid can you be to leave that kind of evidence sitting on a printer? Pro tip: don't get tipsy and print off invoices of stolen property you're selling on eBay and forget about it. I brought up all this information to my boss and showed him exactly what she was doing. He couldn't believe it, and to be honest, I couldn't either. Being a crappy coworker and employee is one thing, but stealing and selling thousands of dollars worth of company property? Really messed up. Jim ended up giving Alice the chance to come clean. He first called me into the office to let me know he will be talking to her and giving her the option to come clean about everything before showing her the evidence against her. I walked back to my desk, and all I remember her asking me is,
What's going on? Is everything okay?
After she noticed I was called in to talk to Jim. I just shook my head and said, Yeah, I don't know. And a second later, she was called into his office. About 5 minutes pass, and I see Alice walk back into the sign shop crying with tears running down her face. Doesn't say anything to me as I watch her start to pack up her belongings in a box. That's when I knew she just got fired. Halfway through packing up, Jim comes by and says, "Are you done yet?" She replies no and starts going on her computer while Jim promptly stops her and says, "No, don't go on your computer. Those privileges are revoked and you cannot be on our computers or network anymore. It's a liability." He allows her to get a couple personal files as he watches her like a hawk. She picks up her box of stuff and is escorted out of the building. Last I ever saw of her. Best part of all this, it was done in front of all the sales team and managers, about 20 of them. They all watched this happen and all watched her be escorted out of the building. About 10 minutes of people asking me what happened, I realized 99% of people there absolutely hated her for related reasons revolving around her poor work ethic, nasty attitude, and awkwardness towards everyone. I got a couple slow claps and handshakes too. I was called back into Jim's office a little while later. He explained they confronted her about the theft, gave her the option to confess to everything, and they wouldn't press charges and allow her to resign. She confessed immediately. I ended up getting a raise right then and there, and was promoted to sign shop manager and was put in place of finding a new team member to interview and hire in, and was able to work closely to HR and hiring department to find the right person. Long story short, after that I stayed for another few months and got a great opportunity at a new job. But I was able to hire in a really good employee that was a quick learner and got her set up to be efficient and get things done. It was almost like a "I must go now, my job is done, someone else needs me" moment when I left. Turns out she was just a toxic employee to most people well before I started there, but was once untouchable because of her relationship with a manager there. Never knew this, but once they weren't a thing anymore, there was no protection. Next we've got the day my homeowners association crumbled. This happened a few years back. Our homeowners association has always been known to be sneaky and to flat out give false accusations on homeowners, especially in this day with security cameras, and we can pretty easily spot out who the investigators are. Most recently, a homeowner was told she was supposed to get approval before she started reshingling her roof. The thing is, her roof hasn't been reshingled in 10 years and she had no plans to do it. Things like that. Call it just a mistake, call it malicious. Well, a few years ago, we had our time to shine. It was a simple morning. I was still temporarily living with my father at the time. Well, one morning we decided to go out to get groceries when we found that his pickup truck had been smashed into. Nothing was taken, it was just smashed into. In fact, I still have pictures from that day. Cops arrive, they do some investigating, and found that a rock inside the truck was from a house down the street. Unfortunately, they couldn't get them to admit to the crime, nor could they prove it was even them. Understandable, criminals will grab things that they find, but it was suspicious. The rock, I should say, was a special kind of rock that no one else in the neighborhood had, some round polish type, very unique. After this incident, I installed a security camera on his house. Well, not 2 days later, we got an HOA violation for a vehicle eyesore that needs to be removed. Just 2 days later. I'm confused how such a letter could have been written up so fast, but I start to suspect foul play. One day we were home and had a knock at the door. The HOA actually called a code inspection officer. The week hadn't even been over yet, so the parts to fix the truck weren't delivered yet. We weren't paying expedited shipping for damages we didn't cause, and the truck was so old, insurance would probably just total it. The truck is sentimental to him, so he wasn't going to get rid of it. It still ran great. Code inspection tells my father that vehicles which do not run need to be moved. They both stop talking and take a second, and both almost say at the same time, "Don't I know you?" Turns out the code inspection officer went to the same church as my father, and they knew each other. The officer tells my father if he can show the truck starts, he's going to write it up as being in code. My father starts the truck just fine as the engine isn't damaged. He tells him to go on with his day and to have a good one. At this point, we are furious. because we are starting to suspect the HOA may have done this, as there's no way they could have possibly known so fast. Unfortunately, our turn of the street had no neighbors with security cameras until I installed one on our house, so it caught nothing specific to our incident. Down the street, these people supposedly broke into a car as well, but the camera on their house was unable to see anything. Dang. Here's where the fun begins. Fast forward a couple months after nothing happened, I decided to install a new dash cam in my car. I found a good one that uses very little power of the battery and can activate if there's any bumps to the car, even if the car is off. It just needs to be wired straight to the battery for this. It's a thinkware. A few days later, we get a violation notice for our mailbox being crooked. It wasn't crooked much, but I do remember it recently having an angle. Odd. I could just fix it. But my car was aiming straight at the mailbox. I'm thinking, no, this couldn't be possible. It only records if there's a bump. I take out the memory card, and apparently I either didn't configure it correctly, but it was recording the whole time. It never went into sleep mode. I watched as the investigator walks up to the mailbox and pushes it crooked, then writes down on his tablet his findings and takes a picture for records. I'm appalled at what I see. I have the proof I need. Now for the revenge. They wanted us to come to the board meeting and present what is going on at our address. We haven't told them yet that we had the pictures, but to summarize real fast how our homeowners association works, the board hires an outside company to do the grunt work. Let's call it binge management. We go to the meeting and sit down. Binge management has the one in control of our account, and I swear to you, she looked like a Karen, so the name fits for her. As time goes by in the meeting, we get to discuss what is happening at our house. We present the timelines and tell them about the truck being smashed, and just 2 days later, we get a letter. We ask what dates the investigator was out for that time. Karen refuses to answer it. She argues ignorantly that we should keep better care of our stuff, as if it was our fault. Then comes the mailbox incident. We tell her that we have reasons to believe that the investigator is the one that is causing damages to our property and is harassing us. Karen denies this and says that is impossible, as she knows him personally. Oh, is that so? I ask. She says, yes. Why? I then pull out my laptop out of my book bag that I had been hiding, open it up to the video file already loaded, and show it to the entire board. Enter Exhibit A, I said out loud and played the video. Karen's face is bright red. She says that is not her investigator. I then also pulled out the letter about the mailbox, which was complete with date. It matches the timestamp on the video. She still tries to claim it's not them.
No, it's a coincidence. I'm sorry, but you have a vandal and it's not us.
It's not? I let the video play, knowing she's falling into a pit hard right now. As the man walks towards my car, you can plain as day see binge management on his shirt. She's no longer red now. She's white as a ghost. The board looks over at her and asks what she has to say about this. Karen is silent and has nothing except a few noises, which I assume was her brain trying to comprehend what just happened. I then proceed to take up a previous case which I happened to remember before we left for the meeting, where we had a grass violation beside our house. Now this area they were claiming was actually not visible from the sidewalk due to the house shape. I asked point blank, has at any time your investigators walked on our property, illegally trespassing? Knowing as per their rules, they aren't allowed to do that. Karen is visibly shaking now and mutters out,
No, of course not,
with her head down, unable to maintain eye contact with me. She probably feels that I have more evidence, but unfortunately I didn't. So I ask again. She asks,
why?
Our neighbor, whom are actually lawyers, literally next door to us where the side of this wall was, stands up and says, actually, that's not true. I have witnessed one of your investigators go between our houses and poke around the trash bins. Bingo. I didn't even realize she had this information. I couldn't have asked for more better timing. Karen, at this point, just starts arguing with our neighbors about no proof. The board proceeds to apologize for the incident, and they were going to discuss what is going to happen in the future about this. At that point, the meeting is over. A month passes, and we get a letter that a new person will be in charge for binge management and new investigators. She was fired that night. Since she was fired, my father tells me we only get the occasional blip of errors, but they correct it immediately. and don't bother us really anymore. My husband is in the army, so your house is mine now. So where I live, there's a small army base, and around it is a housing estate where the families live. Part of this estate was sold to a couple of housing associations, and I live in one of those. The army families move around a lot, so people in those houses generally move every 2 years or so, some a little more frequently, others less so. There's a row of 4 terrace houses directly across from me, and one of them was empty, ready for new tenants. Here's where we begin. I took my daughter to nursery and then went shopping for some new clothes. This was at 9 a.m. I get back around 11:30 a.m. and see a large moving truck in the street. To avoid them, I go to the other side of my property. I suffer from chronic anxiety and tend to avoid most people. I go in the front door and take the new clothes upstairs to sort. Whilst I'm there, I hear a noise from my back garden and door. Looking out the window, I see a man with a large toolbox trying to open my back door, a woman behind him looking furious, and the guys from the moving company standing around with boxes looking bored. I run down the stairs and open the door, meaning the guy, who I guessed was a locksmith, practically fell through the door into my kitchen. He was surprised, of course, and after looking around, he was confused, because clearly someone already lived here. The woman then sighs dramatically and thanks me for finally turning up because they've been there since 8 a.m. trying to get in. She just wants to get her stuff in so she and her kids can sleep. She waves the moving guys forward and then goes to get her kids out of the car. I'm busy trying to stop the moving guys from coming in with boxes, and her 2 kids, about 3 and 6, come charging into my garden. I've got a slide, swing, small trampoline, and windy house there for my daughter to play with. I yell at them all to get out of my garden and stay away from my house. One of the movers looks in the window to my living room, sees all of my furniture in there, and waves his team back to the truck. His team leader pulls out some paperwork and begins going over it. The woman starts yelling at me, telling me I was a liar and a thief, among other things. I've lived in this house for 4 years and tell her such, but she's having none of it. She gets right up in my face, screaming at me, and I'm having trouble not bursting into tears and running away. Or socking her. The locksmith tries to calm her down, and she starts having a go at him next. I call up the local police station office. There's one in the housing estate, but it generally only caters to the army people and such. I figured calling them to deal with her was the best solution. They arrive after a few minutes and take the woman aside. Her kids are still playing on my daughter's things, so I tell them to get off and go to their mother because those toys don't belong to them. They go reluctantly, and when their mother notices, she begins yelling again. Apparently, those toys aren't mine. They were put there by the army for her kids because her husband is such a wonderful soldier. That this is her house, and I'm just some squatter trying to steal it from her. This is when the movers come over and tell her this is the wrong address. She's moving into number 4, and this is number 14. She goes very silent, grabs her kids, and leaves the garden. I call out to ask her if she's going to pay for the damage done to my garden. Grass torn up by her kids and the movers, my door, from what looks like footprints trying to kick it in, and the scratches from the locksmith. My bushes by the gate, movers and her yanking at them whilst waiting for the locksmith. She tells me no, because she's done nothing wrong, which is when I inform her that I have cameras installed that would have seen the whole thing. I ask the officers if they would like to view the footage, and one of them watches the whole incident take place once I bring out my laptop, which both cameras are linked to, and he says he doesn't have anything to collect the footage just now, but he'll come back later to get it. He also tells me that he will have to report the woman's behavior to the base, as a family's bad behavior can have repercussions for the soldier too. It's now 5 p.m. The officer was here collecting copies of the footage in case it was needed and might be shown to certain army officials as an example of her behavior. Husband turned up about an hour ago, and there was a huge argument across the street. Everyone could hear it, but not exactly what was being said. Either way, this family hasn't exactly had a good start to their time here. I can only hope they move away soon, so I won't have to deal with that lady again. Update. So today I managed to speak with the husband of the woman. He actually came over and knocked on my door. He apologized for his wife mixing up our houses and wanted to make sure I was okay. He looked over the damage to my door and said he would be happy to pay to fix the damage and buy some stuff to repair my lawn. I thanked him and asked what happened with the whole house thing. He said the movers arrived first, got the wrong house, and then called his wife, who immediately told them to call a locksmith. The movers had keys so they could get the large items in before she got there. The locksmith apparently is used by the movers a lot and didn't question the house numbers. When the wife arrived, she stopped the locksmith and tried to get the door open with the keys, and when that didn't work, she started kicking the door. The locksmith stopped her and started trying to open the door himself, which is where I came in. His wife told him everything after their argument, and he had been keeping an eye out so he could come talk to me. Things are basically sorted now. For a few who have said I didn't deal with things well, for clarification, I've had a few randoms message me. Of course I didn't. I have chronic anxiety. I'm 8 months pregnant, was all by myself, and I come home to find people trying to break into my house. I wasn't about to invite them in for tea. I was genuinely terrified that that woman might hurt me. So yes, I yelled at those people to get away from my house, and yes, I was angry at the damage done. Calling the police might seem extreme to you or not needed, but I wanted to be certain I was safe. Considering that I am basically dirt poor and wouldn't be able to afford repairs to my door, a door that she damaged to the point of it being cracked around the lock and leaked rainwater all over my kitchen floor because it hasn't sealed right since, I would say I was justified in wanting her to pay for that damage. Without getting a new door, I would have just had to live with a broken one, using duct tape to try and keep the water out, and bracing a chair behind it because it doesn't lock properly anymore. The last few nights I haven't been able to sleep right because my home is not secure and there have been burglaries in my area. So, forget you guys. Next we've got the time I ended my high school teacher's career. This story is widely known amongst my family and is constantly brought up and joked upon in my group of friends, even years later. A buddy of mine suggested that this is the perfect place to make it public, so let's get into this crap storm. Backstory: I was a senior in high school at the time, and I had never been the brightest student. I was a solid C student, and I had never received a detention or had any kind of bad student record. This is important because to this day, I still have no idea why the teacher treated me this way. The teacher, whom we will name Mrs. Frank, had been a teacher there for more than a decade and was widely known for being a petty, heartless jerk, who the administrator saw as the golden child. Mrs. Frank taught algebra, which is my worst subject, so naturally I had issues understanding the lessons and would ask questions frequently. To some, these questions are easily answered, but to me, it was rocket science. Usually when someone asks a dumb question, no one should address it. However, in Mrs. Frank's case, she would belittle me in front of everyone by saying things such as,
And here comes the slow boy again. Wow, surprise, surprise. You don't understand it again? Really? We have to go extra slow for you today, don't we?
etc., etc. I tried going to the administration about it before, but again, she was considered the golden child. They would send someone in to examine her during class, she would act respectful and normal for one day, and go back to being a jerk the next. This goes on for about half the year until I had enough. I went to the local Radio Shack, bought a recorder, and secretly recorded every insult she would throw at me. I would sometimes instigate to make up for the lost time. Go ahead, feed the fire. Fast forward to the end of the year, and I'm sitting in Mrs. Frank's class when I ask a question. Her response, and I quote, because it's burned into my brain, was,
I've been teaching here for over 10 years, and that was the single dumbest question I've ever heard come from anyone's mouth.
She continued the lesson without answering. I calmly stood up, packed up my stuff, and headed to the nurse's office to dismiss myself from school. We were allowed to dismiss ourselves if we were 18. I went home, compiled all of the brutal tapes into one glorious masterpiece, and headed back the next day to show the administrators. I sat down with the principal, and we listened to a couple of the insults before he stopped me. He wanted more witnesses present, as well as Mrs. Frank. He told me we would meet the next day where I could show him and the rest of the administrators the full tape. I walk into school the next morning being the most nervous I've ever been for anything. I was called down to the office where I met with some board directors, the local school police officer, the principal, the vice principal, and Mrs. Franks. What follows was some of the greatest minutes of my life. I watched as the administrators went from fed up with being in another useless meeting to furious and speechless, with some of them keeping their mouths open for the duration of the tape. I also watched Mrs. Frank go from confident and stuck up to her realizing that she had messed up beyond repair. She was publicly roasting herself in front of the most important people from the district. The tape ended, and without hesitation, the administrators looked around in astonishment, and the principal turned to me and says, "I think we have heard everything we need to. Thank you." And I was quietly dismissed from the room. The final time I saw Mrs. Frank was leaving the room. I looked back and we made eye contact through her tear-filled eyes as I gave the biggest, most evil smile. I returned to class the next week, and Mrs. Frank was nowhere to be found. The story spread quickly throughout the school, and I was seen as a saint. I had successfully gotten her fired and made it almost impossible for Mrs. Frank to return to her teaching career, as well as cut off most of her connections she had with other teachers in the school. I had ruined her financially because no school district in the area would hire this walking piece of garbage. If you're reading this, Mrs. Frank, I'd like to take this moment to tell you to go forget yourself. Edit. Should have cleared this up in the story, however, I didn't want to go into too much detail about the process. Yes, this was perfectly legal to do, and my parents and I did our research to make sure we weren't breaking any kind of law. In my state, you can record someone in their place of business without both parties' consent. I want to address some frequently asked questions. I regret sharing the dumbed-down version because I left out the amount of crap I put my parents through during all of this. Tons of meetings and phone calls that would have made the story a lot longer, and I didn't think anyone would enjoy reading it. I do not still have the tapes. It was in the administration's best interest to keep them in case she sued for false termination, and it would have gotten out of hand if the tape spread and gave a bad reputation towards the district. Even if I kept the tapes, this all took place over 15 years ago, and there's no way in heck I would be able to find them. And yes, I took algebra as a senior because again, I wasn't the greatest student to walk those halls, and throughout all my years of school I had tutoring. I'm sorry I'm not a genius. And I don't remember what questions I asked that pushed me over the limit that day. Next we've got, she threw turkey at my coworker. Our cast. We've got Entitled Mom, we've got Nice Kid 1, who's about 13, Nice Kid 2, probably around 5. We've got Awesome Manager, Poor Coworker, and me. Alright, here we go. Some backstory. I worked at a grocery store. Won't name names, but it lurks in Florida mainly, and is only found elsewhere once or twice. Starts with a P, ends with an IX, and in my opinion has the best chicken tender subs anywhere. Well, in this store, I worked in the deli. We made subs, sold fried chicken, meals, rotisserie chicken, and also freshly sliced deli meat to the person's liking. I have dealt with many a Karen, and whatever the male equivalent is, as it is a food service, and this type of store goes out of its way to follow the customer is always right, and if you don't like it, we will fix it for you. On to the story. I was on the evening shift, started about 12:30. Well, a few hours into the shift, in walks the Karen. She very much looked exactly like the Karens that I'd heard about, but I thought nothing of it. She was not my customer, as my poor coworker handled her. Slicing, you know it, the turkey she asked for. This particular turkey was our store brand, and was pale and without any seasoning. He slices the turkey to her standards, weighs it, packages it, and hands her the bag. Nice Kids 1 and 2 are both patiently waiting and nibbling the slice of cheese I'd given them from our samples, with their mother's permission. She takes it, stares at it, as if he had just handed her a bag of toes. Total disgust on her face. He asks her if anything was wrong. Now my poor coworker was brand new, so I wandered closer to make sure everything was okay. She took a deep breath and started.
This spot on the turkey. This turkey is bad. How could you sell this?
And lifts the bag so he can see. He looks at it, then at me. I looked at the spot and saw the darkened spot. Ah, I knew what it was. I stepped in. Ma'am, I promise you, all of our meat in the case is fresh as possible, and we monitor all the dates. Every day at every shift. That is a protein spot. It sometimes happens. I promise it is totally harmless. She shook her head and almost screeched.
No! I know what this is. It's melanoma.
At this point, I had to hold back a giggle. Melanoma is skin cancer. She continues.
My husband works at a meat farm. He knows all about this. It's dangerous. I can't believe you'd sell something with melanoma on it.
Oh dear reader, it took everything in me not to laugh. Well, after this last proclamation, she hurled the turkey at my poor coworker, who was totally taken aback at everything that was happening before his eyes. Her nice kid 1 was obviously embarrassed by her mother making a scene in the store, and nice kid 2, probably too young to understand the embarrassment, just said in the cart.
I want to speak to your manager.
She called manager by her name, so I assumed she'd been around before, just never while on my shifts. I sent poor coworker to get manager and picked up the turkey. Shaking my head, I put it in the case. Since it was already sliced, we could probably use it for samples. Don't worry, it was wrapped in many layers of plastic, and I changed the outside bag before putting it back. While she talked, yelled, at my awesome manager, I went into the back to my other coworkers who had hidden when she started screaming and explained the whole story. We all laughed and joked about it, and while you couldn't hear us through the door, she probably saw me come back, and I could hear her, yes, still screaming. She was that loud.
And now they're laughing at me.
Yes, we were. I walked out just in time to hear manager say, I'm sure that we can fix this, and I'll cut the meat myself. Awesome manager asked me to grab another brand new turkey from the cold storage in the back, and entitled mom got her turkey and left. Her nice kid mortified, and her other kid oblivious. Maybe this happens a lot. The funniest thing about this, she probably meant to say salmonella, which is something poultry and eggs can have when undercooked. Our turkey is all thoroughly cooked and kept properly. Oh, Karen. Next we've got Record Store Blues, featuring Karen and the managers. A good friend of mine reached out to me via Facebook Messenger to inform me that a copy of not one, but 2 CDs of my favorite circus/carnival themed artists was on the shelf in the local record store. For the curious, it's Circus Contraption, and the albums in question are Gallimaufry and Grand American Traveling Dime Museum. I diddy-bopped down immediately to the store, anxious and excited, and am able to get both of them. I'm having an awesome day, so I ignore the tapping on my shoulder, thinking that I am in someone's way, edging to the side without comment. Cue Karen and her +4 haircut of dubious perception.
Excuse me? I have been trying to get your attention for the last 12 minutes.
Me. I just got here. So, congratulations?
Help me immediately if you want to keep your job.
What seems to be the issue? I figured that I could help her, go back to browsing other music choices, keep my day on an even keel. Nope, she's having none of this.
Put that down now and help me move this drum kit to my car, or I'll have you fired.
At this point, she leans in super close, spitting each word like venom.
It would probably hurt if you got fired before Christmas, wouldn't it? You bearded jerk?
I'm thinking, lady, I don't want to know what messed you up so bad that you have to try to wreck other people. Just, dang.
Are you going to be helpful or unemployed?
I'd rather chug broken glass through a lemon-flavored straw than deal with this. Go get me fired, okay? Karen immediately loses it. Looking behind her, I can see the manager bracing for impact. Not exactly on my side for what I did, but hey, not sure that I can care either. Manager. Ma'am, they don't work for me. How can I help you? And Karen released a second volley, aiming for the manager. On my way to the counter, I overhear that Karen just bought a new drum kit from the store next door, the pawn shop. They're very much not a record store type of pawn shop. Apparently, she's thinking that I was working there and would feel obligated to carry her purchase to her car, which immediately freed the manager to tell her to get the heck out of the store. When he got to the counter, he gave me a stern comment about not igniting volatile people, and I paid for my stuff. The cashier did offer to add in a free copy of Soundgarden CD, which I politely and firmly declined. She did double punch my rewards card though, which was nice. Entitled Mom blames our company for a free-to-play game not working. I work in a retail computer store. I'm a part-time technician, but also deal with customers with regards to sales, etc. So a while back, we had this entitled mom and entitled kid coming in to buy a new computer for entitled kid. We discussed some options in their price range and end up selling entitled kid a mid-range gaming computer. This happened on a weekend, as it was the only time I ever worked, as I was part-time. Fast forward to next week. I came in to work the morning, seeing entitled kid's rig on the table by the other tech work. It was a very specific rig that I built myself, so I recognized it. My work colleague calls me over, seeing as I was the only avid gamer in the shop, and tells me that this is my baby, seeing as I sold the entitled kid the rig and I would know how to fix some game-related issues. Little did I know at the time that he was avoiding the screaming banshees and rather passed the work on to me. I didn't mind working on it at all because I could have some fun while working, as I had to test why the game wasn't working on entitled kid's computer. I had to play the game until it crashed and try to figure out what was wrong. The game in question was Tom Clancy's Ghost Recon Online. This happened during the early release of the game, and being a free-to-play game, there were bound to be bugs. The first few times the game crashed on startup, sometimes mid-match, and other times just refused to even start. About an hour into testing the computer, entitled mom storms in. I don't exactly remember the dialogue, as this was a few years ago. Entitled mom basically already shouting at me about the useless computer I sold her. At this point, I'm trying to explain to entitled mom why the game isn't working, as I still haven't gotten a clue myself yet, as many other people are having the same problems. She wasn't having any of it. She told me to refund her for the computer, as we sold her useless trash that entitled kid can't use anymore. She was red in the face when I told her, first off, our store has a no refund policy, which you can clearly see on the wall behind me. And secondly, there is nothing wrong with the computer we sold you, but rather the game itself is broken. It was after I made it clear that the game wasn't working that she then requested a refund for a free-to-play game? It turns out entitled kid spun some story about how he bought the game, to which I thought he bought in-game currency, only later realizing he actually bought hacks. Story for another time in another subreddit. She was livid that we never made it clear that there is a no refund policy and practically stormed out. Eventually, after a whole day of working on it, I got this game to work. Not for long, because 2 to 3 weeks later, a new update got released and the game broke again. Lo and behold, entitled mom screaming at me again for the broken game, which turned out to be entitled kid being banned for breaking the rules. But as I mentioned, a story for another time. I had been working on this computer for a full day, and she was furious when I told her that the hours of labor I worked on would only cost her $17, which was very cheap considering. She basically stated that the computer was garbage and that it should have worked on day one. She eventually paid and left the store, never to return again. Haha, I wish. On our next stock take, we noticed 2 game cases missing from our shelf. We only recently started selling games, but I came up with a system to store the game discs in a holder in the back with numbers attached to the game case or something in the game case, in case of an attempted theft. I am not sure if entitled mom or entitled kid decided to try and steal a game from us without us noticing, or if some other kid snatched them, not knowing the discs were in the back, but I really do hope it was entitled kid, realizing his mistake afterwards that we kept the games in the shop. I wish that they would have come into the store complaining about buying a game without the disc included. That would have made for a good story. But whoever attempted to steal it is now left with an empty case. Ha! Side note, any CD keys or game keys were also removed. This brings me to day 3. 3 weeks after the initial fix, our shop had fluctuating foot traffic. Some days we have no customers, some days we have too many. It was the start of the new month. Everyone had their salaries paid in. This means our shop was very busy. We barely had enough reps to deal with customers. We only had 3 people working on any given day. I was busy talking to a customer at the tech desk with a laptop that had a lot of issues, from mails not working to USB ports not working to even blue screening. In walks Entitled Mom. No entitled kid, no PC. I thought Entitled Mom may have just been shopping around for new games or a keyboard or something for Entitled Kid. Entitled Mom walks up to the tech desk, to which I just quickly greeted with a, "Hi, Entitled Mom. I'll be with you in a minute." Entitled Mom stood there, arms crossed, tapping her foot as if I was inconveniencing her by talking to a customer. About 5 minutes after I booked in the laptop, printed the necessary work orders, Entitled Mom looked at me with this "finally" look. Entitled Mom then proceeded to ask me, I've been waiting here forever. Are you going to come pick up this computer from my car or not?" I just looked on with a confused face. Entitled Mom then told me she phoned the shop, my work colleague answered, and she said that she was on her way to drop off Entitled Kid's computer again. She had apparently been parked waiting outside our shop in the disabled parking spot for 15 minutes. To anyone that doesn't know, we have a disabled parking spot right by our front door. We were so busy that my colleague afterwards had to apologize because we didn't have the time to look outside for a car to pick up a computer, and he got too busy to inform me Entitled Mom was on her way. Customers did this often, but I do have a few more stories about stuff like this. So, onto the computer. I went outside to fetch the machine. Entitled Mom annoyed again, asking why the game doesn't work. After a few minutes, and Entitled Mom trying to explain what her son told her, I said I can figure it out and have a look at it. She then knew to ask what the labor cost would be due to the previous event. Knowing how stingy she is, I told her no more than $20. She seemed fine with this, if it was the game's fault again this time. This time, please lady, the computer is working fine. I have the same issues with the game at home. After printing out papers she left, this is where the fun begins. We couldn't access the account for some reason. I just remember having difficulty opening Steam. At this point, I just thought he forgot his details, and we did the whole Steam password reset thing. After an hour of no results, I write an email to Steam support asking for help with the account. The next day, Steam wrote back with something along the lines of, "This Steam account has violated the terms of service and is therefore banned." It was a lengthy email detailing why the account was banned and that it cannot be retrieved. I was shocked at this email. Entitled Kid had been breaking the rules. There were no actual bought games in his library, and I saw the icons on the desktop for a few games that cost well over $20, and he had bought hacking software for Ghost Recon Online. Knowing now why the game wasn't working, I called Entitled Mom to ask her and Entitled Kid to come to the shop so I can explain to her why the game isn't working. This didn't seem like something I could say over the phone. I don't know exactly why his Steam account itself was banned. Usually a VAC ban only affects the game you cheated in, but I think he may have even tried to get Steam games for free. I don't have a lot of experience with Steam bans, so forgive me for being a bit hazy on the details. This was around 5 years ago after all. A while later, they both entered the store. As this was a Sunday, it was a lot quieter. I had printed out the response I got from Steam. I told her that Entitled Kid had been breaking the rules, that he had also bought with her credit card without permission, and that Steam had banned his account. I handed her the printed out mail so she could confirm that I wasn't lying or making any excuses. The look at Entitled Kid's face was priceless. At this point, he knew he royally messed up. His face went white. Entitled Mom turned over to him to ask what this was all about, and he just nodded and said sorry. She was livid, asking how he could just use her card without her permission, how he could be breaking the rules, how he could lie to her face about all of it. At this point, Entitled Kid was bawling his eyes out. This is where I started getting some respect for Entitled Mom. She didn't even complain about the labor price. She in turn asked us to keep the PC in the shop for the whole week so Entitled Kid could learn a lesson and clear it of everything that needed to be removed. She was even fine with paying for the extra labor hours. At the end, we did a full new Windows install, as there were a bunch of viruses on it, so we spent a lot more time working on the computer. Unfortunately, in the next story, Entitled Mom went back to being her entitled jerk self again, refusing to pay $35 for 2 days of full labor for 2 tablets, her home computer, and Entitled Kid's gaming rig. Entitled Mom came in with her work computer, Entitled Kid's gaming rig, and 2 tablets, probably Entitled Mom and Entitled Kid's tablets. We had to do some routine virus removal for the 2 computers, and one of the tablets didn't want to work properly. Keep this in mind, because this is important. Our company policy dictates a minimum of $17 labor per device per hour. That means we could have charged her at least $70, almost, for the labor we did. The 2 tablets were easily sorted out after we did factory restoring and reinstalling of most of their usual apps. Entitled Mom gave us their login details to set up the devices again. Entitled Kid's gaming rig, again, had a few viruses on because he had been doing things he shouldn't have. Entitled Mom's work computer was messed up. Had to do a full-on wipe the machine, do virus scans on our expendable tech PC of all backed up data, clear everything and restore her data virus-free. This took us about 2 whole days of working on her machine alone. At the end of the weekend, the next Monday, I had to go back to varsity, but was filled in by my coworker. Now my boss, knowing how unreasonable this Entitled Mom is, told us it's fine to charge her a measly $35 for all the work, which for our shop was still a lot for tech work, as we rarely charge anything over $35. When Entitled Mom came in on Monday to fetch everything, she went red with rage when Coworker notified her the labor would be $35. Now, $35 for all the work we did on her devices is nothing. Any other shop would have charged well over $100 for all the time and energy spent on the work. Entitled Mom kept shouting in front of customers how unacceptable our rates were and that she refuses to pay a whole $35 for the work as we work on multiple clients' machines at the same time. Now, we have a switch. I can't remember the name of it. Keep in mind, I haven't worked as a technician for almost 4 years now, that you can plug 4 computers into and switch the screen between the 4 PCs so you can easily multitask and work on more than one computer on the same screen. Most tech shops have this. Usually, when one machine is busy doing something, like a backup or virus scan, we switch to any other computers to keep working. Entitled Mom threw a fit that we didn't prioritize her computer, which we actually did. It took preference over any other computers we had plugged in, and also stated that Entitled Kid's machine was a quick fix and the tablets were just reset that any shop would do for free. Now, my boss, reasonable as he is, and wanting to get this screaming hag, as he called her, out of the shop, very begrudgingly lowered the price to $17, let her pay, and told her to buzz off. Not in so many words, but he told her that if she is unhappy with our low-price services, she can go somewhere else. My boss doesn't take crap from anyone, not even a customer. We usually do anything we can to keep a customer coming back, but he wasn't having her chasing away potential customers with her banshee screaming. I don't remember seeing Entitled Mom again after this, but I'm glad. I think she was too embarrassed when she realized how cheap our prices really were and didn't want to admit defeat. She was one of the worst customers we ever had to deal with. Next we've got, "You sure you want me to do that, officer?" So I worked for the IT help desk of our local city council, when one early morning at around 5:30 a.m., my mother stormed into my room, scaring the crap out of me and my cat. Half asleep, I asked why she was screaming at me. Clearly in a panic, she told me that the police were on the phone and asking for me. Now, I won't go into detail, but suffice to say that my first thoughts were, what did I do now? And I didn't do anything, did I? Still half asleep, I walked downstairs and got on the phone and vaguely asked, "Yes?" I got a reply along the lines of, "Dang it, it's always the same with you guys. Don't you know it's market day?" Yeah, every Wednesday, isn't it? It is every Wednesday. Has been since around 1302 AD. Officer: "What? Are you gonna start making a joke out of this?" Me: slowly starting to wake up completely. No. I just don't get. Officer cuts me off angrily. Your car is on the market square, and they can't set up their stalls, dang it. Get over here now, and move this dang car. The IT department was next to the market square, so sometimes the car did indeed stay parked there overnight. Me, really having issues with people screaming at me. No problem, be right there. Now, usually I rode my bike to work, but seeing it as it was clearly a pressing matter, I asked my dad, who had awoken from my mother's frantic behavior, to drive me to the market square. On the way there, I explained the situation, and my dad couldn't help but give a chuckle and told me, "Don't do anything stupid," to which I gave him a smile, shrugged, and with a Han Solo-esque grin told him, "Hey, it's the cops." My father snickered and shook his head, knowing that doing something stupid was somewhat of my middle name. If an officer tells you to do something, you do it, right? We arrived at the market, where people were already setting up stalls to prepare for market day, except for where I spotted the car of the IT hardware department, and about 15 meters behind it, a police car with its light flashing. I got out and slowly walked over to the two officers that were standing near their car. One of them immediately launched into a tirade about how we were all the same, and how we, IT guys, always thought we ran things, which basically we did, including their IT. Once he paused, I calmly asked him what he wanted me to do. Again, he blew up, nearly screaming, "Move the car!" Not wanting there to be any doubt, I asked if he was sure, and he truly nearly lost it, screaming incoherent words at me. Okay, calm down. I'll do it if you insist. Let me go up to the office and look for the keys." So off I went. I went to our offices, where I was met by our cleaning/coffee lady, who asked why I was in so early. So I explained the situation, and that the hardware department's car was on the market square again. Confused, she asked me, "But that's not your department, is it?" To which I sighed. "Nope. Do you know where the keys are?" So together we looked for the keys, which we found rather quickly. I asked if she'd accompany me down because the police were making me nervous, which she kindly and graciously did. Upon getting back down, it was clear that Angry One hadn't calmed down, and that I'd probably taken longer to go get the keys than he wanted. In quick strides, he walked up to us, and without a word, I tried to hand him the keys, which he didn't notice because he screamed in an angry, high-pitched voice, "Move that dang car!" At this point, our cleaning/coffee lady looked at me and said, "But you..." I shrugged and gave her the most roguish smile I could muster at that time. She smiled, gently shaking her head. Once more, and just to make sure I got things straight, I calmly and politely asked, "So you're telling me I have to move that car?" Now, I had seen cops get angry before, but never turn red with figurative steam coming out of their ears. He blew up and pulled out his nightstick and took one step towards, as if to indicate I was getting close to either getting arrested or smacked over the head. I turned and quickly made it over to the car, nervously but loudly muttering things like, "Under duress," and "Not my job." I got in the car, fumbled with the keys somewhat, and in 3 to 4 tries started the car. I waited about a minute, and then the car sputtered forward and stopped. I tried again. Again, the car sputtered, but then it took off like a rocket. All I remember from the short drive is seeing our cleaning/coffee lady bursting out laughing as I passed just before I plowed straight into the police car. As I was getting out, somewhat dazed, I saw the 2 police officers standing there, white as sheets and utterly perplexed. I stammered at them the immortal words, I don't know how to drive, man. I just pick up the phones and help people." So yes, they had called the only person in all the IT departments that didn't have a driver's license and just worked on the phones, and one that doesn't really like the police, nor getting woken up hours before I have to get up. I suffered no consequences, as there were CCTV cameras filming it all, with audio, which I of course knew, and our cleaning/coffee lady clearly heard the cop order me to move the car. Having known the mayor since I was 12 helped me too, of course. So the moral of the story is, always do what the police tell you to do. Next we've got, I turned off a radio station. In the 90s, I was a technical operator for a radio station. Long story short, I made production elements for them and adverts on top of my other duties. New management came in and decided to only pay me for the tech OP shifts I had done and nothing for the production. First month he was there, I had invoiced for a little over $3,000 and received a 960-pound check. I ran the overnights, so when midnight came, I moved all my production into a hidden folder in System 32, shut down the servers, threw the breakers, and left. I got a phone call in the morning and was asked to come in for a meeting as I had left them up the creek. I'd made pretty much 70 to 80% of all the adverts and production. Stingers, idents, montages. The new boss was a jerk. He told me I'd damaged the product, which I just laughed at, as before he came in it was a great 80s station and he had turned it into a top 40 station you could find up and down the dial. We'll call him Jay. I'd also found out the sales staff were charging customers £200 for advert production. They were on 10% commission, and I was getting paid £40 per each advert, and they pocketed the rest on top of their commission. Bear in mind, the rest of the outsourced ads cost £150 to £200. In the meeting, I laid out my demands. Me. I can restore everything, but I don't only want the money you owe me from the past month. I want the money from the previous adverts your sales staff has pocketed from my work. They essentially made £160 extra from each advert on top of their commission, around £300 to £400 a pop. Jay. There's no way we can do that. Me. Well, there's no way I can restore the adverts. Jay, looking at pieces of paper on his desk. We can give you an extra £200 a month. Me. I want the whole amount. Handed him an invoice that totaled a little over £16,000. Jay, color now drained from his face. We. Me. Jay. I pause for dramatic effect. You honor that invoice, or you will have to recreate or outsource all of the production. Okay, let me see what I can do. I'll sort something out for your next invoice date. Me. Jay. Another pause. If I don't walk out of here with the money today, you don't get them back. Jay. As soon as you restore them, I'll see what I can do. Me. Jay. Long, drawn-out, dramatic pause. I will have no guarantees, and I'm not stupid. A bank transfer today, and we can sort that out right here and now. Jay then phones the head office, and within the hour, I had every penny of it in my account. His face was a picture when he followed me to the server to watch me just move the files over from one folder to the other. Me. Yes, they were right under your nose. Jay, through gritted teeth. You'd best get home and get some sleep. Me. No. Good luck tonight. Within 5 hours, I was in Spain, where I stayed 4 weeks. When I got back, I did hear through the grapevine that the sales team were out for blood. Jay bollocked and blamed them for me being ripped off, and they all lost their commission for 3 months and just got basic pay to make up for the loss. I'm pretty sure the company made more than enough back from that to pay for my negotiation. I used some of what was left to buy a laptop and started DJing around town for a few years. Back then, it was a rare sight and used to get nerdy types on a night out just hanging around the booths to see what I was doing with a computer in a pub. My friend used to say I looked like I was doing my homework. She wanted to speak to my manager, so I called the person who manages my life. This happened yesterday. I was in Canadian Tire. For all of you non-Canadians, it's like a mix between a Walmart, a Home Depot, a Bass Pro Shop, and an auto shop. I was wearing jeans and an old red polo shirt. The employees there wear black pants and a red polo with a triangle and maple leaf logo on the chest. I was getting wipers for my car because mine aren't clearing the rain off my window anymore. It's a riveting story. They have this touchscreen thing there where you select the vehicle and it tells you the specific sizes you need for each wiper and brand. I was fiddling with the screen and going through the different sizes and makes of wipers and reading reviews on each one. I research everything before I buy it. Drives my wife crazy. I hear someone behind me say, "Excuse me." I think she wants to use the screen to figure out what wiper to buy. So I move to the section that has the wiper brand I'm interested in and start looking for the size I need. My assumption was wrong. She followed me to where I was now poking through the very badly stocked wipers. From now on, I'll be me and she'll be Karen.
Why did you walk away from me? That's very rude.
I didn't even know she was talking to me at this point, so I kept looking at wipers.
Karen, this is unbelievable. I'm talking to you.
I finally click in that I'm the one she's talking to. So I stupidly turn to face her while gripping a 28-inch wiper like a toddler holds a crayon. Me. You talking to me?
Yeah, you. I need to know what size wiper to get for my Mercedes.
That's what the screen is for, I said as I gesture towards it with the wiper in my hand and go back to searching for the second elusive 28-incher.
You are terrible at your job. This isn't proper customer service,
she said, all huffy. I don't work here. I'm gonna go back to this now.
I want to speak to your manager right now. This isn't how you treat customers, ignoring me and refusing to help me. It's disgraceful.
At this point, she kind of stomps off, but only a few aisles away, and the aisles in the automotive department aren't full height ones. They are just like chest height, so you can see right across the whole department. She just does a few laps of the aisles around where I am. She's looking all over the place for a manager, but not going far. I think so she doesn't lose sight of me. Nee. Still don't work here, so going to be hard to find that manager, and you're not listening to me, okay? I say to her and trail off as she's obviously not caring at all. I go back to my wipers. While she's on her walk, I find my wiper and start to head towards the checkouts. She chases me down and gets in front of me, trying to stop my escape before a manager gets there.
No, you're not allowed to leave until I speak to your manager about you.
I've had enough of this buffoon. I pull out my phone and call my manager. I'm self-employed, so I call the one person in my life who could reasonably be called my manager. The wife, henceforth referred to as boss. Me. I'll call her for you. You aren't going to be able to find her here. I put it on speakerphone so the crazy lady can hear. As the phone rings, she's giving me this superior smirk, like I'm about to get my butt chewed out. Me. Hey, how's the trip going? She's on a business trip. Boss. Great. Been having some excellent meetings with the L3s, VP level people. What's up? Me. Picking up some wipers. Boss. And you're so jazzed about them that you needed to call me in the middle of the day? Karen is getting really frustrated at this point. I'm obviously not getting to the me getting fired fast enough for her. Me. Nope. Got a lady here at Canadian Tire who wants to talk to my manager. I kind of thought you're the closest thing to that. Want to talk to her? Boss. What the heck? Am I on speakerphone? Oh yeah, the crazy lady can hear you. How else is she supposed to talk to my manager? Say hi to the crazy lady. Karen is finally starting to realize that I don't have a store logo on my shirt and that maybe I'm not an employee. Boss. You're such a jerk. I'm sorry, ma'am. My husband is an idiot, but he doesn't work there. I start to laugh at this point. Me. It's cool, hun. She seems kind of slow or something. She probably doesn't realize I'm laughing at her. I say through my laughter, while Karen makes some kind of appalled noise from the back of her throat and stalks off. I manage to get my wipers and leave the store after that without any further incident. My wife thinks I was mean to her. I say I was fighting stupidity with jerkery. Next we've got, think you can take my stuff and get away with it? Good luck studying for exams with a broken laptop. Back in my first year of college, I used to live in a residence on campus with 3 other dudes. 2 of them were cool. Shout out to B-Dog and Al. But the third, named David, had a nasty habit of taking things that weren't his and mysteriously forgetting that the objects had fallen into his possession. Of the items he had stolen and were subsequently found in his room included food/snacks, notebooks, vapes, and earbuds, albeit cheap ones. We had all complained to our RA, but since they were such small items, we were told that we should just have a house meeting and talk about it with David to have the problem fixed. We had 2 of those, where he claimed, "It all looks so similar. How am I supposed to know which is mine?" Considering that we all kept our stuff in our rooms, this was obviously BS. But the RA, residence assistant, said unless it was something major, campus police wouldn't launch an official investigation. So we instituted a masking tape policy and marked everything. But lo and behold, he still continued his petty theft. Knowing nothing would happen unless I took action, I planned my revenge. I shelled out around $80 for a USB device that once plugged into an unsecured USB port, fired the computer by building a charge and dispersing it into the port, pretty much destroying the CPU among other parts. Now, obviously I wasn't going to plant this anywhere, but I had to make it seem like this was a tool and not some sort of setup. So I had roped B-Dog and Al in on my plan and installed this software called Device Lock, which protects USB ports from being used without express permission from the user on all of our devices. Also, just in case the jerk tried to plug it into our laptops. I even went as far as taping my name to this silicon time bomb. With them roped in, the last thing to do was wait and see if David had learned his lesson. It took all of 3 days, but expectedly, David did not learn his lesson. I was at the library when this happened, but David had decided that this crappy USB would be the perfect addition to his collection of stolen stuff. So he went into my room and took it. Big mistake. I got a Snapchat from B-Dog that David was losing it and I needed to get back ASAP. I hightailed it, and when I got near our residence, I could physically hear David yelling from the hallway. When I got inside, he was screaming that he was going to sue me for purposely trying to damage his laptop by booby-trapping a USB. Admittedly, I should have held my composure better, but I laughed in his face. I told him that the USB was clearly labeled with my name on my desk in my room, and I was using it to test whether my computer ports were secured from devices such as this. Screaming ensued from him, after which our RA showed up, heard that crap fest from down the hall, and asked what the heck was happening. I stayed quiet to let David attempt to lie his way out of this, but holy crap, this jerk kept to his story. After explaining my side, the RA said we are both going to campus police as this was pretty serious. Cue me thinking I just messed up my whole future for a stupid act of revenge. When we got there and explained our stories, campus police had none of David's crap. They told him that 1, he cannot sue me since this was not a trap, but a security tool that was within my own living space of which he had no right entering to steal from. And 2, he was being relocated to the crappy single residences on the other side of campus, and if they caught wind of this again, he was getting banned for life from res as well as receiving a non-academic offense. A nice little chat with the dean about his misconduct. His tone immediately flipped to crying and saying he had all his exam notes on there. It was his stress that was causing him to do this, and he had paid to live in the nicer dormitory-style housing, but they basically told him, tough crap, this is your one and final warning. The 3 of us enjoyed the rest of the semester with an extra bedroom for storage space and beer pong, which was definitely a win. As for David, I've only ever seen him in the cafeteria or library on occasion, sitting there studying, without his laptop. Next we've got Entitled Mom Rescues My Service Dog. I have PTSD, depression, and at the time, undiagnosed bipolar disorder. This will explain some of my behavior throughout. When my conditions got worse, I adopted a 1.5-year-old McNab Collie, short-hair border collie, slight hound mix to be my psychiatric service animal. He looks like a small greyhound with a collie's markings, head, and paws. He is insanely smart and picked up training really quickly. When I would have panic attacks coming on, he was trained to perform a very specific signal to get my attention and alert me to sit down while he tried to distract me. This is important later. My wife calls me a fainting goat when I panic. I lose consciousness with little notice and drop wherever I am. My job was not safe for my dog to come with me at the time, so while I was searching for better employment, my wife would look after him. I was working about 15 minutes away from my apartment at the time when I got a panicked call from my wife saying my dog had been stolen. I don't ask questions. I just pack up my bag and jacket and bolt for the door. Manager asks what happened, and I tell him my dog's been stolen, and he tells me to keep him updated. I made it home in 5 minutes, and my wife is outside sobbing with our roommate looking like he is going to hurt someone. I ask what happened, and they tell me that they had been sitting in our enclosed front porch next to the complex entrance drinking coffee. It was a sunny day, and McNabbs are bred for really hot weather, so my dog was sunning himself on the sidewalk on the other side of the half wall that separates our porch from the sidewalk. All our neighbors knew him, and he's a herder, so he never went more than 15 feet from his pack and would constantly come check in with us. He wasn't wearing his vest or a collar as they were in front of our place. They hadn't seen him for maybe 15 minutes, and when he wasn't on the sidewalk, they panic and start asking people if they had seen anything. A guy walking his dog said he saw someone loading a dog matching mine into their car and driving off. That's when they freaked out and called me. I panicked and called 911 immediately, saying someone had stolen my service animal. In our state, animals are considered people, so stealing a dog is taken very seriously. There was an officer at our door in 5 minutes getting our statement, along with the man who saw what happened and was nice enough to wait. Officer put my number in his phone, gave me his card, and said to call if I heard anything. We start wandering the neighborhood, asking anyone outside if they had seen a dog matching mine. Striking out, walking the 4 blocks of surrounding neighborhoods, we start calling every pet store and vet in the area, starting close and working our way out. After 2 hours of calling and being on the verge of passing out, I call one last store I had forgotten about. They tell me there is a dog matching mine with a woman who has him on a makeshift lead in the store. I ask the employee to go over, say his name, and hold his hand up like he's signaling someone to halt. He does, and my dog does what he was trained to do, which is stand up and hug that arm to get my attention and break me out of an anxiety spiral. I tell them to keep them there, and I'll be there in 2 minutes. On my way, my roommate calls the officer, who says he's at an emergency but will call me as soon as he's done. We get there, and we see a car matching the dog walker's description in the parking lot. There is a kid, maybe 10-ish, sitting in the passenger seat with the window down playing phone games. I recognize the car as one from the complex across the street from us. We walk into the store, and I spot my dog with an impatient-looking woman standing near the counter. I call my dog, and he immediately rips out of the woman's grasp and bounds over, trying to tackle me. I go up, and in not-so-friendly words, ask the woman what the heck she thought she was doing stealing my dog. She makes some excuse about believing he was a stray and was trying to take care of him. I responded with, "Thank you for taking care of him, but forget you for stealing him." The employee tries to tell me to calm down and says I am being unfair and she was trying to do a good thing. I snap at him that he needs to stay out of this because he is not helping. Entitled Mom then says in the snooty tone that Karens have patented, "Well, I asked a bunch of people and tried to see who owned him, but no one answered, so I rescued him." My roommate pipes up with, "Jerk, I am 6'3", have bleach blonde hair, and was sitting in the sun 15 feet from the dog. You did not try hard enough." She starts to lecture me about starving him because you can see his ribs, and he was so hungry. He has a very high metabolism, working breed, and an allergy to starches, so I make his food from home. He literally eats healthier than I do. She then tells me that it's a lie because he ate an entire 5-pound bag of crappy kibble before they came to the store. He's always begging for food, and I about socked her. By this time, she's getting upset and trying to act like I don't deserve my dog, and that there's no way he's a service dog, even though I have his vest in my hand. She then has the gall to suggest that her and her kid could take so much better care of him. The employee tells me to be more polite and that I was out of line treating her this way, and if I didn't behave, I would be removed from the store. The employee's manager had come out after hearing yelling, and without knowing any of the situation, threatens to call the cops on my roommate and I for harassing this poor lady. I pull out the officer's card and tell him I'll save him time because the officer has my report, and if he had been there instead of me, the woman would have been going to jail. She panics and beats it out of there while I'm still arguing with the manager. As we are leaving, the employee follows us to the door, and the manager lectures us about treating the lady badly and that I was banned from his store. I flip him off and we head home. I called the cop, but in my panic had forgotten to get the license plate, so he told me to keep an eye out for her in the future. My dog got a steak and veggie dinner that night, but started throwing up. He spent the next 3 months working that crap food out of his system and itching/chewing himself raw in places. I ended up staying home for 3 days with a constant anxiety attack, but my boss was chill and gave me extra vacation pay. The only good thing that came from this whole debacle, besides getting my dog back, was the next day I called the owner of the pet store. They only had 3 locations, and I knew from shopping at one of the other stores that he was usually there 3 days a week. I explained what happened and how the manager and employee had treated me, and he told me not to worry. I should swing by his main store to pick up a free cow bone for the pup, and he would handle the rest. I found out later that the employee was immediately terminated and the manager was demoted and eventually fired for crappy customer service practices. Next we've got revenge against my old boss. I worked at a bar not too far from me from July last year until June of this year. A bar which was practically owned by a married couple, T and J. I had actually enjoyed working there as a cook and was regarded as one of the good ones, which was sad considering only 3 out of the 8 cooks were considered good, and I was the only good cook who worked nights. T was the kind of boss who emanated the my way or the highway attitude and tended to have a meltdown whenever something didn't go her way, or God forbid, she had to fill in for an employee who couldn't work that day. And man, did she make it obvious that she hated working at the place she owned. Last April, I decided to look for a new job so that I could get a little more money, since bar cooking isn't exactly the highest paying job ever. But I decided to give a 2 months notice for the sake of the kitchen manager finding someone who could replace me, just because I didn't want to leave the kitchen knowing that crap employees were going to be left for nights to fend for themselves. Surprise, surprise, he didn't. T was not too thrilled about me, one of the good cooks, leaving, and made it a point to be as petty and cold as she could to me until my last day. Everything she said to me was either a scathing remark, whether it was deserved or not, and never said anything positive to me, even shooting me dirty looks every time I made an order for her. Needless to say, I was a lot happier about leaving that place. Now that doesn't necessarily mean I was going to stop going there to eat, which is where our story begins. This past Sunday, I went to the bar to watch the Lions and Vikings game. A couple times I shot the crap with a few of the servers and went back into the kitchen to go greet the cooks and catch up, obviously when they didn't have orders coming in. After chatting with a buddy of mine who was working in the kitchen, I went back to my seat, which was unfortunately stationed right by the entrance. Cue the Karen and her husband, who happened to be waiting at the entrance to be seated. I didn't notice her until I heard the all too familiar ahem coming from her. I figured she was talking to someone else, so I didn't think anything of it. Then I felt a tap on my shoulder. Oh, great. What? Karen. Excuse me? Aren't you going to seat us? Great. They thought I was a server. Ma'am, I don't work here. Karen, looking puzzled. But I just saw you come out of the kitchen and talking with the servers. Your point is? Your clothes even look similar to theirs. How are you not an employee? I guess that was partially my fault because while cook uniforms were black t-shirts with jeans, which I had on myself, their shirts have the bar's logo splashed across the torso. I was wearing a plain black shirt with jeans. Me. Ma'am, seriously, I don't work here. I don't have anything resembling the bar on my clothes. That shouldn't matter. Now hurry up and sit us before I complain to the manager. I'm thinking to myself that this whole situation shouldn't have even been possible in the first place, that no one is actually that persistently dumb. But then again, I found out about this subreddit and noticed how common it is for people to really be that dumb. Me. Go ahead, she's right over there. Then I pointed T, who was begrudgingly waiting tables. Karen waved her over and T came near us. T. Yes? How can I help? Karen. Your server refused to seat me and claimed he doesn't work here. T looks at me. Who? Him? I shrugged. I figured that was the end of it, but I guess I should have known T would still have a petty grudge against me. T. I'm sorry. He's not an employee. I would have to be an idiot to hire someone like him to work here. Now, let me grab you a table. Yeah, I wasn't going to let that comment go. Well, it sounds like you were a total moron for about 11 months then, T. Of course, feeling spiteful, I said this as loud as I could in the small bar we were in, which most of the bar heard. Fortunately, my tab was already paid for, so before T could say anything, I walked out. Fortunately, her husband and all the other employees liked me, so I don't see myself getting banned anytime soon. But then again, Who knows with managers/owners? Entitled kid eats a crab in aquarium store and mom defends him. Alright, boys and girls, this seems super unbelievable. But when you've been working in the pet trade as a sales associate for long enough in weird areas, you start to see your fair share of entitled kids and entitled parents. My first of many stories, so don't be too harsh. For context, I work at a mom and pop pet shop in the eastern US, and while my expertise is in aquatics, I try to be a jack of all trades. The day that this happened was rather uneventful until this point, all up until Little Snot and Karen entered the store. My store was pretty modest, so it was fairly easy to see customers come in and out, especially in the fish department. So I got first look at these magnificent creatures. A 40-something-year-old lady talking on her cell, her hair obviously dyed blonde, and outfit practically screaming midlife crisis, while her kid was in tow. The kid must have been about 7 or 8, playing on his Switch, his shirt covered in what looked like a mixture of pizza sauce, soda, and plenty of mystery stains. At first, things were pretty normal. The kid originally not caring about anything in the store, while Karen was getting enraged at him for not paying attention, though that changed rather fast. Karen and entitled kid were near the ferrets when Karen took his Switch, immediately causing a reaction of screaming and pouting before being distracted by some of the fish over in my department. Alright, a bit of unnecessary information, but the way my store's fish department is set up is that 2/5 of it is fresh water, 2/5 is equipment, and the rest is salt water. Given we weren't really known for salt water, we only kept pretty generic yet sought after fish like hippo tangs, various clownfish, 6-line wrasses, etc. The thing about the first two is because of Finding Nemo. Kids are always drawn to the Dories or Nemos. Alright, that all in mind, the first thing entitled kid did was head over to the small assortment of hippo tangs we had, practically pressing his face against the glass as he yelled out, "Dory!" Karen hailed me down from algae scrubbing, and this started the encounter. I like to act casual around the workplace as I find it lowers any sort of anxiety a customer has and makes me way more approachable. First things out of my mouth was, "Hey there, how's your night going? Need help with something?" Karen started out our encounter with a roll of the eyes before pointing to the tang and demanding a price with a simple but rude, "How much for this thing?" It was the way she said it that was rude. After shifting gears from a casual standing to a more professional one, I simply told her that the tang was $160. He was a good-sized tang. Of course, she scoffed, but what came next was a bit more worrying. Karen pulled out $30 from her purse and placed it on the desk we used to bag fish, saying in an aggravated tone, "That's all you're getting. Bag him." Things start to go poorly from here. It's worth noting that it was 9:15 at this point, the store having closed 15 minutes ago, though we make it a policy not to ask customers to leave until 9:30. It was just my manager and myself at this point, my manager in the office closing down registers, so essentially it was like I was the only employee in the store. Seeing Karen place the $30 on the table, I raised an eyebrow before leaning against the wall, simply asking her, "Do you have a saltwater tank?" She didn't take this well. She screamed without a second passing, "None of your business. Now bag my fish, you little jerk." I simply refused and slided her $30 back towards her before she slid it back, now more upset. "I'm going to get you fired if you don't bag my fish right now." At this, entitled kid was getting upset at the interaction, screaming like a banshee about how he wanted the tang, still referring to it as Dory, and beginning to stomp his feet in a tantrum. Soon enough, I was asking them to leave. So this is where I messed up. I should have called the cops at this point, knowing that she wasn't going to leave without a fight. Entitled kid was on the floor at this point, pounding his fists to the floor as snot dripped down his face as Karen tried to guilt me. "Sorry, sweetie. This guy doesn't want you to have the fish. He's perfectly fine with you having no fish friend to make you happy." At this point, she turned back up to me. "Do you see what you did, you stupid jerk? You are breaking my angel's heart because you're being too much of a jerk to sell me the fish." Internally, I was laughing. This kind of situation happened now and again. I had figured everything was starting to resolve at this point, Though I was mistaken. Entitled Kid flipped. You know how some opera singers can break glass with their voice? This kid would have a knack for something like that. Entitled Kid was screaming as loud as humanly possible at this point as he managed to reach into the tank. At last, my manager had made his way out of the office and watching what was going on. Entitled Kid grabbed a piece of live rock, accidentally grabbing a long spine urchin. Angry screaming turned right to wails of pain as he pulled a rock out of the tank, a poor little pom-pom crab in tow. At this point, I was less focused on the kid, but more focused on making sure my manager was calling 911, which he did. When I turned around, I saw something that still gives me nightmares to this day. The kid had been clutching his hand while his mother tried to help him, something hanging out of his mouth. The poor little pom-pom crab had been crushed by the kid, Entitled Kid having shoved it into his mouth and chomping down on it, leaving a little claw hanging out of his mouth. The next 2 minutes was a strange combination of astonishment and panic. Myself telling the kid not to move his hand since he would break the spines of the urchin, while Karen began hitting me with her crappy purse, screaming that it was my fault. Me. Your kid shoved his hand into a tank, one with toxic animals nonetheless, fox-face rabbitfish, and did this to himself. Calm down and leave him alone so when the paramedics get here, they can get the spines out.
How dare you? You expect me to let my angel suffer? If you just sold me the stupid fish, this would have never happened.
Your kid reached into the tank and ate a crab. What the heck did you teach this kid?
Don't you ever tell me how to raise my angel. He had the right to eat that crab. You took something from him, and he took something from you.
By the end of this interaction, the paramedics had arrived, restraining the kid and taking him into an ambulance as the police tried to sort things out. Unsurprisingly, Karen tried to pin everything on me, saying I threw the urchin at him. What the heck? And he ate the crab in a panic. Equally, unsurprisingly, we had the entire thing on CCTV, including Karen hitting me with her purse. Long story short, Karen was arrested as apparently she had stuffed the rock into her bag to give it the extra punch. Didn't notice until after the paramedic saw me that I was bleeding on my leg from the jagged live rock. After getting a statement, the cops left. Karen and Entitled Kid going off to wherever the heck the cops took them, and I got out of everything with 8 stitches and a $300 bonus from my boss for handling the situation without anyone getting seriously injured. From what I ended up hearing, the kid had actually got stung by the fox face's dorsal spines, and that sent him into a blind rage. The mom got a plea deal, and she ended up with a huge fine, some jail time, and some other crap. In summary, I didn't sell Entitled Mom a fish. Kid flipped, grabbed an urchin, and ate a crab. Entitled Mom got arrested. This was by far the worst situation I had ever had in the store, and I still can't believe the outcome of this till this day. This was 3 years ago now. I was in work the other day when I saw a pouting kid losing it at his mom for not letting him get a hippo tank, and this has been brought to the front of my mind ever since. Edit. At work at the moment, gonna try to find out what happened from my boss later. Just noticed an inconsistency with the timeline. Switch wasn't out yet. I personally always remember it was a Switch, though given the circumstances, there is a big chance that it was an iPad or something similar. Edit. So a lot of you guys have been asking about what ended up happening to Karen and Entitled Kid. I had sat down with my boss this morning and asked about the events, and while I didn't get all the answers I was looking for, this is what he had to say. As I've stated, I still stay up now and again wondering what could have made people act this way, and I did get a few answers. According to my boss, the woman, Karen, was the wife of a known criminal, which didn't exactly surprise me given what happens in my town. The cops never had gotten a warrant to search their property for whatever reason, but this had given them the opportunity. In regards to the CCTV footage, he had told me that he handed it over to the police and couldn't show me for legal reasons, but that there wasn't much to see other than my manager running to the sales floor. The way our CCTV cams are placed only really shows part of the sales floor, the office, and the register counter. Medical bills was way easier. I've been on an expensive med, not covered by most insurances for most of my life, so I've always had to pay a lot for a really good insurance company, and this time it paid off. I ended up with a $100 charge for the ambulance, though my boss reimbursed me. Honestly, this was just a really surreal situation, and it has really confused me for a while, but I'm pretty happy I got things cleared up. Hopefully, Karen is rotting in jail, and little jerk is getting the love and direction he should have been getting all along. Next we've got revenge is best served frozen. We don't own a car and live at the end of a cul-de-sac. I have people use my driveway all the time to turn around. It's not a huge deal to me. A little annoying when they compact the snow and it's harder to shovel, but whatever. One of my neighbors had a ride service come pick up their kid every day. The van would park in my spot and begin honking at like 8 a.m. I worked nights at the time. Half the time, he'd be half parked on my grass. I told my neighbor that I don't overly mind my spot being used, but not if he's going to honk like that every morning, and especially not if he's going to drive over what little lawn I have every time. She spoke with him, he ignored it. I spoke with him and got,
"What's your problem, man? It's not like you're using it."
to which I repeated that I don't mind him using it if he stays off my grass and doesn't honk every morning. Apparently, suggesting he wait till the kid notices he's there, or, God forbid, he have to drag his butt out of the car to knock on a door was just ridiculous and inhumane of me. So I left a recycle bin at the foot of my driveway. He just ran over it. I called the dispatch for the ride service and was told they are subcontractors and technically self-employed, but they will pass along the message. I wake up the next day to pounding on my door. Dude is mad. Him.
"How dare you call my boss, you stupid jerk! What the heck is wrong with you?"
Me. Well, it's quite simple. You were told not to use my driveway if you were going to drive on my lawn and wake me up every morning. Now get off my doorstep.
"I'll sue you if I lose my job because of you."
You've been warned. Don't trespass on my driveway or property again. Dude storms off in a huff. So this happened on a Thursday. The kids have a PD day the next, and it's supposed to be one of those delightful Canadian weekends where it drops to like -40 Celsius. For my American friends, -40 is where Celsius and Fahrenheit meet up, so it's so cold. So that night, I grabbed one of my more beat-up plastic garbage bins, made sure to plug all the holes with a generous amount of duct tape, stuck a sign on it that read, "Private property, driveway not for public use," and proceeded to fill it to the brim with water. Now, before anyone thinks I'm a jerk willing to potentially endanger anyone in the car, I'd like to point out that my neighbor's kid is the first to be picked up, so it's just the driver in the car. Cue Monday morning. He sees the garbage can, backs up a bit more, and defiantly charges the garbage can as if to teach me a lesson, and proceeds to cause some pretty serious damage to the front end of his car. Dude gets out fuming, calls the cops, and comes pounding on my door, screaming about how I'm going to buy him a new car and that I'm about to be arrested. Cop: "So let me make sure I understand this situation. He asked you not to park here if you couldn't refrain from honking, then warned you not to park here and put up a barrier. Now you expect him to be charged and pay for damages you caused yourself to your vehicle in an attempt to destroy his own personal property?" I will never forget the look on his face when the officer said, "Yeah, that's not how this works," and turned to me, asking if I wanted to pursue charges for him damaging my personal property. I just gave him the most crap-eating grin I could muster and said, "Nah, I think we're good." I then went back inside to enjoy a morning coffee while watching him from my kitchen window as he paced back and forth in the cold, waiting for a tow truck and having to call the company he worked for to explain why they needed to send out another driver to complete his route. A cul-de-sac can also be used to describe a street with no exit, which is exactly where my home is. It's easier for them to use my driveway than three-point turn their way out like Austin Powers. I was drinking my morning coffee because they were 6 p.m. to 2 a.m. shifts, so nights, but not quite overnights, and I usually got up around 10 a.m. Every time he'd wake me up around 8 or so, I wouldn't be able to get back to sleep, hence why I needed him to stop. Next we've got, we don't sell pizza because you have the wrong number. The end result of this story, which I will tell you up front, is that we lost the ability to order from several local Pizza Huts for life. We used to have a phone number that was very similar to a Pizza Hut, and our two numbers were commonly mixed up for obvious reasons. This was back before the days of cell phones and everyone having their own personal number, and we actually had to get a caller ID because of this. For years, we had this Pizza Hut's client base call our house and order pizzas. The thing is, people will not listen when you tell them, sorry, wrong number. We would have people call back 4 to 5 times and then begin screaming into the phone.
I know this is a Pizza Hut, you jerk. Or, give me the number or I'll kick your butt.
This was pretty normal, and the Pizza Hut was even aware of this and profusely apologized when we would call them, never giving us anything for free though, despite the massive inconvenience of the phone ringing off the hook. Well, Pizza Hut corporates then pays for an advertisement on paper, billboard, and phone book. And guess what? They botched the number. They put our number on the things for the phone number as one of the locations in our town for Pizza Hut's pizza. Why? Because 1s and 7s are the same number apparently. The phone calls we get explode. It goes from like 3 to 5 calls a day to like 100 to 200. Initially, we were directing people with a message that simply said, "This is not Pizza Hut. Their number is blank." It didn't end well. We would get calls from people screaming into the voice recording,
I want a pizza. This is bull. I'm going to get whoever doesn't answer this phone.
Aren't boomers great? We got that crap all the time from older people. Well, upon this happening, my dad calls into the Pizza Hut and says, "Look, all we want is to not have to change our number. If you guys will please change yours or pay for ours to be changed, it was like a $10 convenience fee or something. We will stop getting your dang phone calls." The manager cussed my dad, who had him on speakerphone, calling him all kinds of names for getting him bad reviews, as well as losing customers to his branch, which is locally owned. What a joke. It's costing their business a solid 10 grand easy over a phone number. Why not just change it? I don't know. My dad looks at the phone, hangs up, and says, "Okay, jerk. You want to be like that about it?" My dad then instructs my 17-year-old self and my sister to take all calls from now on. If it rings, pick it up, take the order, and say, "Okay, your pizza should be there in 1.5 hours." Then when they call back, to tell them, "Sorry, the driver just left." And if they call back a third time, say, "Well, I can get you on the phone with my manager, but he's probably going to kick your butt if you keep complaining." And then switch the phone with someone else and have them say, "Listen here, jerk. You aren't getting your pizza and we're keeping your money. Get over it." Or something along those lines. 2 weeks pass, and my dad tries to get the Pizza Hut to change our number for free, never pointing out that they messed up their ad, as apparently they were completely oblivious to this fact. Again, the manager screams at my dad, saying, "I don't have the money to change your number." We even tried calling other Pizza Huts to get the issue resolved, and they're corporate with no real luck. Fair enough. It's game on time now. Why? For 2 reasons. 1, my dad got a phone with a transfer button, and 2, because summer was rolling around, and me and my sister loved messing with people over this. It was a really bad influence on us, to be honest. We fielded phone calls every day, all day long. We had friends come over, and they loved partaking in the same thing. We had a general plan. 1, every other call would get a pizza delivery. 2, on the other calls, we would get them really upset by talking smack to them and saying, "Okay, do you want to speak with my manager?" and just cold transfer them to the Pizza Hut. It took 6 more weeks of us doing this, and the Pizza Hut closed. A few weeks before they closed, we got a phone call from Pizza Hut corporate, who more or less threatened us with a cease and desist. Sounded like they didn't really understand what was actually happening, as they accused us of stealing their phone calls. We called their corporate and explained what was going on, and even played our recordings of us talking with them before about the issue and them ignoring us. All they said is, "You had better stop. This is illegal," over and over. We didn't stop. They were aware of what was going on and didn't want to do anything about it because to fix their foobar. A few weeks after the owner lost his job, he called our house and was trying to argue with my dad about how bad of a person he was because I lost money and got my butt beat several times. Apparently, we had upset a few people so bad, they actually went in and got revenge on him and the other staff. To this day, it cracks me up that a company can be so oblivious, and is the single reason I don't believe we live in anything close to a meritocracy, Anyone in this position who has any merit would instantly change their number, but not a corporation who has money to sue, and not a middle manager who has an ego problem. So Karen, what did you think of today's stories?
They were horrible.
Horrible? How dare you? These were some of the best we've ever read.
Oh, shut up, Mr. Reddit. It's ridiculous what people like myself have to go through. Dealing with stupid people like yourself and your subscribers.
Look, Karen, you can say whatever you want about me, but don't you talk about my re-army.
Re-army. Most of your viewers aren't even subscribed to your channel. 70% if I'm correct.
Well, I can't argue with that. That's true. Most of my viewers don't actually subscribe for some reason.
It's because you're stupid, Mr. Reddit.
No, I'm not. All right, guys, let's prove Karen wrong by making sure you're subscribed to the channel and turn on notifications.
They're not going to listen to you.
And if you'd like me, or Karen,
What?
to record a special message for you, come visit me on Fiverr, link pinned in the comments below.
Never.
And join as a channel member today, and Karen will give you a special shout out in the next video.
Like heck I will.